Tonight, you are going to work in a palace that looks peaceful only from the outside. You are not the queen, not a royal concubine, and certainly not the heroine who finds a forbidden letter before breakfast. You are one young palace attendant in late Joseon, Korea, where a dropped bowl can travel through the gossip network faster than any royal messenger. For 1 week, the painted gates of Changdeokgung will close behind you, and nearly every hour will belong to somebody else. If quiet journeys into the inconvenient corners of history help you relax, you are welcome to leave a like and join the channel, provided being gently informed about terrible career choices is genuinely your kind of evening. And thank you to everyone who leaves topic ideas. You have a talent for finding occupations with beautiful uniforms and alarming working conditions. You can also tell me in the comments where you are listening from and what time it is in your part of the world. Somebody, somewhere, is awake at 2 in the morning wondering whether a Joseon court lady was ever allowed to say, "That is not in my job description." The short answer is no. Now dim the screen, settle beneath a blanket, and let the soft sound of a fan, rain, or the room around you smooth away the edges of the day. There will be no shouting here, no dramatic poison cup, and no handsome prince waiting conveniently beside the lotus pond. Only wooden corridors, paper doors, warm kitchen steam, folded cloth, low voices, tired feet, and the slow machinery of a royal household. The night is still blue over Mount Bugok when a gate latch falls into place. Your sleeves are already in the way, and your first morning as a palace maid begins. Before the first day can properly begin, there is an awkward detail to settle. You did not apply for this position after seeing a cheerful notice beside the market. The expression palace maid sounds like one simple occupation, but the Joseon court used women in a wide and carefully divided household organization. The broad word was gungnyeo, palace women. It could include ranked attendants trained for intimate service, skilled workers in sewing and embroidery rooms, kitchen women, cleaners, water carriers, and lower status laborers whose freedoms were not the same. Their lives changed across more than 5 centuries of Joseon rule, and no single week can represent them all. So tonight you are entering a plausible late Joseon composite, a young trainee attached to the women's inner quarters, low enough to carry what she is given, close enough to observe several departments, and new enough to make every mistake in her imagination before she makes it with her hands. History has assigned you the role of beginner, which is always convenient for history and rarely convenient for the beginner. Many court girls came from government slave households or from families already tied to royal service. Regulations did not always match practice. Commoner daughters could enter because a household needed money, because parents believed palace service offered food and training, or because a connection opened a narrow path. Whatever the route, the choice was unlikely to feel entirely yours. Girls destined for the most intimate departments could enter very young, while those assigned to other rooms might arrive later. You are old enough in this telling to understand that you are leaving home, but young enough for senior women to consider every habit unfinished. Your accent may be too broad. Your bow may be too shallow. You may walk as if a corridor exists for getting somewhere, when the palace knows that a corridor also exists to display rank, restraint, and the proper distance between two people. You bring a bundle of clothing, a few private memories, and the dangerous modern expectation that competence will be noticed before obedience. That expectation will not survive Monday. At home, even a strict household contained familiar corners. There was a place where you knew which floorboard complained, how your mother sounded when she was tired, and whether the evening rice had caught slightly at the bottom of the pot. The palace replaces that knowledge with gates, outer space and inner space, public halls and private chambers, royal residences and service yards, each divided by thresholds that announce who may cross in what clothing at what hour, carrying what object. Changdeokgung is not one enormous building. It is a landscape of wooden halls, stone terraces, covered walks, walls, courtyards, kitchens, storerooms, gardens, and small service rooms fitted into the slopes east of the main city. The roofs seem to float above painted brackets. The paper doors glow when lamps are lit behind them. Rain gathers along the dark tiles. It is beautiful in precisely the way a workplace becomes beautiful when thousands of visitors arrive after everyone who scrubbed it has disappeared. The senior attendant who receives you does not need to be cruel. In fact, calmness is more efficient. She looks at your hands, your hair, the way your skirt is tied, and the direction of your eyes. She asks a few questions whose correct answers you have rehearsed, then asks one you have not. You answer too quickly. Her expression does not change, which is worse than anger because it gives you nothing to measure. She explains that palace speech is not market speech. Names, titles, rooms, meals, clothing, illness, sleep, even the ordinary act of asking whether someone wants water can take special forms when the person in question is royal. You will learn by listening. You will also learn by being corrected. The palace has refined correction into an atmosphere. It is in the pause before a senior repeats an instruction, the glance toward your crooked ribbon, and the silence that follows a bowl set down 1 finger width from its proper place. Training includes posture, forms of address, household ritual, reading and writing for some attendants, and the practical arts of the department that claims you. Palace women became known for a distinctive, disciplined hand in Hangul, now often called palace style or gunche. The graceful letters that survive in court documents and correspondence did not float from a leisurely brush. They came from repeated practice, controlled movement, and a world where written words could carry orders, affection, warning, or dangerous evidence. You learn how to kneel without collapsing onto your heels, how to rise without using the floor like a piece of climbing equipment, and how to fold a garment so its ties do not emerge, looking as though they fought during the night. You learn that quickly means without visible haste, quietly means without making others aware of your effort, and carefully means the fault will still be yours if the object was already cracked. The palace expects something larger than labor. A ranked court woman's life was imagined as a lasting attachment to the royal household. Marriage was generally not the ordinary future. The king stood symbolically at the center of the inner court, even though the overwhelming majority of attendants would never have a romantic encounter with him and probably preferred the safety of that distance. Coming-of-age ceremonies marked the transition of trainees into established attendants, and promotion could take many years. A young girl might become an adult under the eyes of the same senior women who had corrected her first bow. She might grow old inside a sequence of courtyards that visitors now cross in an afternoon. Release could come through age, illness, political change, or royal permission, but leaving was not a weekend decision. The palace gave food, clothing, community, training, and sometimes influence. It also claimed time with remarkable confidence. This is the first reason you would struggle to last a week. The work has not yet begun, and already the scale of the bargain is unsettling. Your modern self likes to imagine that identity is a private room with a lock. Here, identity is partly a schedule, partly a uniform, partly the person you serve, and partly the women who stand above and below you in a hierarchy older than anyone currently inside it. You do not introduce yourself with a bright account of your interests. Nobody has asked about your 5-year plan. Your plan is to remember the correct title, follow the right pair of shoes through the right doorway, and avoid turning your back at the wrong moment. The future can wait beside the gate with the rest of your luggage. Yet the arrival is not only loss. Other girls glance at you from the service room. One hides a smile when your folded cloth slips. Another moves her bowl slightly to make space at the evening meal. A woman with silver beginning at her temples checks the knot at your collar, tightens it once, and says nothing. These small gestures are not sentimental decorations. They are how people make institutions livable. Palace women taught one another, protected one another, competed, resented, remembered, and formed bonds inside a system that official records usually describe through offices rather than feelings. Kings fill the chronicles because kings are what chronicles were designed to hold. The woman who showed a frightened child where to warm her hands rarely appears. Tonight, however, you can let her remain for a moment beside the low brazier, turning your sleeves away from the ember. At last you are shown the room where several trainees sleep. Bedding is rolled against the wall during the day. Boxes hold clothing and small possessions. The floor may be warmed from beneath by ondol flues when fuel is available, though warmth is never distributed according to personal preference. Someone near the hottest section sleeps as if she has been gently roasted. Someone near the paper door feels every thread of winter air. There is no private lamp for reading until midnight, no shelf of skincare products, no glass of iced water placed optimistically beside the bed. You lie among breathing strangers and listen to the palace settle. A door drawn shut, a cough behind paper, a distant guard call, the muted movement of someone whose duty continues while yours pauses. Tomorrow begins before the sun. The palace does not care that you have only just arrived. It has been waiting for workers, not for you. The first sound is not a charming bird in the garden. It is the rustle of bedding being rolled while the room is still dark. A senior whispers a word, and everyone else moves as though connected by one invisible cord. You wake with the heavy confusion of a person who has forgotten both the century and the location of her shoes. By the time you find them, The girl beside you has dressed, smoothed her hair, folded her bedding, and developed a quiet professional disappointment in your entire family line. Palace life followed the royal household's needs, and those needs began early. Kitchens had fires to light, water had to be carried, rooms had to be aired or warmed, clothing had to be prepared before the royal person who would wear it was ready to rise. The best service made effort invisible, which means the effort had to happen while the people receiving it were still asleep. You dress by touch and dim lamp glow. The everyday clothing of court women varied by period, season, rank, and department, but it communicated belonging at once. A dark blue skirt and a pale jacket could mark the palace attendant, while senior women and ceremonial occasions brought other layers, colors, hair arrangements, and formal garments. A trainee's hair might be braided or arranged in the style assigned to girls of her room. None of this is costume in the modern sense. The ties must sit correctly because clothing is part of discipline. Sleeves must not sweep dishes. Hair must not loosen while you bend. The skirt that looks wonderfully fluid in a TV scene becomes less romantic when you're trying to cross a narrow service yard, carrying warm water without dipping the hem in mud. Beauty and inconvenience have agreed to share the same garment, and beauty has not offered to carry the bucket. Outside, the flagstones are cold through your shoes. Palace courtyards amplify weather. In winter, the open spaces hold wind. In summer, the damp heat gathers beneath eaves. During the rains, water shines on stone, and the wooden thresholds become small tests of balance. The buildings are mostly timber, so fire is a constant concern. Lamps, braziers, kitchen flames, and ondal furnaces make comfort possible while also threatening the entire palace. Water jars and firefighting tools matter. Ash must be handled. A coal carried carelessly is not merely a personal error, but a potential architectural event. You begin the morning by learning where flame is allowed, where it is forbidden, and how many people will remember your name if smoke appears from the wrong roof. This is a very efficient way to wake without coffee. Time is measured through bells, drums, watches, changing light, and the schedules of people above you. Joseon's court possessed sophisticated timekeeping instruments, including water clocks and sundials. But your day is not improved by knowing that the institution can describe precisely how late you are. A senior attendant does not consult your sleep cycle. She knows which preparations belong before the dawn audience, which meal precedes which visit, and when a royal elder expects morning greetings. The king's routine might include receiving officials, studying with scholars, reviewing reports, honoring elders, eating, resting, and performing ritual duties. The queen and other royal women had their own obligations and household authority. Each visible action depended upon prior invisible actions. Your morning exists in the word prior. You are sent with 2 other girls to fetch water. Lower status women, such as Missouri, performed much of the hardest carrying and cleaning, and their lives differed from those of ranked Nain. Some were married and could move beyond the palace more freely. The broad modern label Maid tends to flatten these distinctions, but the buckets do not become lighter because language is complicated. Water is needed for washing faces and hands, preparing food, cleaning vessels, tending floors, and supporting the many small rituals of comfort around the royal family. A wooden or brass container has a weight when empty and a personality when full. It swings, pulls at the shoulder, and discovers every uneven stone. You are instructed not to spill. This advice is technically flawless and physically unhelpful. The route is as important as the destination. Male officials, guards, eunuchs, craftsmen, and messengers occupy other parts of palace life, and movement between outer and inner quarters is controlled. The separation is not absolute in every place or circumstance, but it is meaningful. You do not wander through the throne hall because it appears photogenic at sunrise. You follow service passages. You wait at gates. Objects and messages pass through authorized hands. Eunuchs often worked as intermediaries in the royal household, and senior palace women managed access within the women's domain. A palace is a building made from permissions. The wall is only the permission that has become visible. Back in the quarters, the water is divided without drama. A basin is placed. A cloth is wrung. The floor is wiped with controlled strokes. Paper doors and wooden frames require care. Painted surfaces are not attacked with enthusiasm. Dust, soot, ash, hair, food grains, damp footprints, and the ordinary debris of many bodies must disappear before their owners notice. Cleaning methods depend on surface and season. Floors may be swept and wiped, bedding aired, mats tended, brassware polished, chamber vessels removed. The intimate physical needs of royalty do not vanish because court ritual is refined. They simply acquire attendants, euphemisms, special objects, and strict rules about who may see what. Near a royal chamber, sound changes. People lower their voices, steps become smaller. Doors are handled with both hands. The Jimel attendants, whose name suggests the closest or most intimate service, work near the living spaces of the king, queen, or other royal residents. They manage clothing, bedding, washing, messages, lamps, and the endless sequence of small needs that occur around a human being whose smallest inconvenience can become everybody's immediate profession. This does not mean they drifted by whispering secrets behind silk screens. It means they must know routine so well that a needed object arrives before the request becomes irritation. They are household memory with sleeves. Your task is to wait at the edge, observe, and carry a folded cloth when instructed. Waiting sounds restful until you attempt it under supervision. You may not fidget, you may not lean, you may not stare at the painted ceiling, even if the ceiling is currently more interesting than your entire responsibility. You must remain alert without appearing curious, present without becoming noticeable. A senior woman can stand for a long time with an ease that makes you suspect she was born beside that door. Your ankles begin a private rebellion. Your back sends a formal petition. Both are denied. At some point, a royal person moves behind a screen. You glimpse fabric, not a face. The hierarchy that organizes the whole compound passes within a few steps of you, yet your correct response is to lower your gaze. Modern celebrity culture trains people to collect proof of proximity. Palace service trains you to make proximity disappear. You will know when someone rose, what medicine was brought, whether a sleeve was stained, which dish returned untouched, and who waited outside during a conversation. Survival depends upon behaving as if this knowledge has nowhere to go. Before dawn is fully over, you understand that secrecy here is not a dramatic vow made once. It is a muscle used every hour. By the time pale light reaches the paper doors, you have discovered that invisibility is skilled work. A good attendant does not vanish in the literal sense. She must be found instantly whenever needed. What vanishes is friction. Clothing appears in season and in order. A room warms before cold becomes complaint. A lamp is trimmed before smoke darkens the paper. Tea arrives at a suitable temperature. A message crosses several thresholds without acquiring extra words. The palace is full of objects that seem to move by themselves because women have learned where to stand while moving them. You, unfortunately, have not learned. You are always half a pace too near the doorway or one breath too late in noticing that everyone else has bowed. Forms of address are a forest. The person before you may be a queen, queen dowager, royal concubine, princess, crown princess, senior court lady, junior attendant, nurse, female physician, or worker from another department, each located within an order of age, rank, office, residence, and relationship to the royal family. The queen herself stood beyond the ordinary numbered ranks and oversaw the inner court, while royal consorts and female officials occupied defined positions. Ranked court ladies used titles associated with their responsibilities. Everyday working groups also developed their own seniority. You do not need to recite a chart while carrying a tray. You need something harder, to feel the chart before you speak. The senior woman teaching you uses correction sparingly. She demonstrates how to enter a room, pause, kneel, deliver a message, and withdraw. The sequence seems simple until you try. Your first entrance is too quick. Your second is so cautious that the door remains open long enough to cool the room. On the third, you hold the message correctly but turn the wrong way when leaving. Nobody laughs. Their refusal to laugh feels almost ceremonial at home. Clumsiness might become a family story. In the palace, it becomes data. This senior attendant now knows you must practice turning. Confucian ideas about hierarchy, family, gender, and ritual shaped the court, but they did not turn human beings into diagrams. Royal women could wield household authority, manage resources, sponsor rights, preserve family memory, and influence access. Senior court ladies could supervise personnel, supplies, and discipline. A long-serving attendant close to a queen dowager might possess more practical knowledge than a young official outside the inner gate. Power here often moves through relationship and trust rather than public title alone. This makes the palace more complicated, not less. You cannot assume that the woman holding a bundle is unimportant or that the person speaking softly lacks influence. The safest rule is to treat every senior as if she remembers mistakes from 3 reigns. Some of them do. You are told never to repeat what you hear in the inner rooms. The warning extends beyond royal secrets. Gossip can damage a woman's standing, disturb households, reveal illness, or become a thread in factional politics. Court ladies' access made them valuable as messengers and, at times, targets of suspicion. Officials worried about private requests reaching the throne through women, a practice often criticized as yoel, influence, or petitioning through female channels. The official record therefore notices palace women most clearly when something has gone wrong, which is rather like reconstructing modern office life entirely from disciplinary emails. Silence, however, does not mean the women never speak. In service rooms, they exchange instructions, news, memories, teasing, complaints, and the efficient shorthand of people who share exhausting work. A senior knows which royal resident dislikes a draft. A kitchen woman knows which tray must return quickly. A sewing room attendant knows that a formal garment cannot be mended with thread that merely looks close in the lamplight. Knowledge travels. The palace could not function if every department behaved like a sealed jar. The art lies in moving necessary information without letting curiosity ride on top of it. You begin practicing the palace hand with brush, ink, and paper. Hangul, created in the 15th century, offered a script suited to the Korean language, and women of the court became important users and transmitters of it. A brush exposes hesitation. Press too hard and the stroke swells. Lift too soon and it thins. Your teacher's letters balance with a calm you do not feel. Yours look as if they are trying to leave the page before being ranked. You copy household phrases until the shapes settle. The work trains more than writing. It trains measured movement, attention, and the ability to repeat a form without decorating it with your mood. Later, you carry a small written message to another room. It is folded and held so that the writing remains private. The distance is short, but the responsibility makes the corridor longer. You pass a painted door, a stone basin, a courtyard pine, and 2 attendants whose conversation stops before you are near enough to hear it. At the threshold, you announce yourself, wait, and deliver the note to the proper hand. No one applauds. This is one of the palace's defining features. Success often produces nothing. The message arrives, the floor remains clean, the meal is warm, the garment fits, and the day continues. Failure produces an audience. By mid-morning, your face has learned an expression of respectful neutrality. It is not emptiness. Behind it, you are counting steps, searching your memory for titles, wondering whether your left ribbon is lower than the right, and trying to interpret a senior woman's eyebrow. This expression may be your greatest early achievement. Modern life encourages a person to be authentic at work, as long as the authenticity is cheerful and available during business hours. Joseon palace life asks for something different, a self carefully arranged for service. Your private thoughts remain private, partly because displaying them would be rude, and partly because nobody has scheduled time to discuss your personal brand. At last your teacher says again, and you repeat the entrance. This time the pace is right. You close the door without noise, kneel at the marked distance, deliver the words clearly, and withdraw in the proper direction. The senior attendant gives the smallest nod. It lasts less than a second. You will remember it all week. In a world of restrained approval, a tiny nod can feed the spirit like a full meal, which is fortunate because the actual meal waiting for you is mostly grain and vegetables. Royal cuisine is one of the most celebrated legacies of Joseon court culture. This is wonderful news if you are the person seated before the royal table. You are not. You are the person carrying ingredients, washing vessels, trimming, grinding, straining, warming, arranging, covering, uncovering, tasting only when instructed, and watching 12 beautiful side dishes travel past you towards somebody with a much better chair. The court received regional products and seasonal ingredients from across the kingdom. Rice, grains, fish, meat, vegetables, mushrooms, seaweed, fruits, sauces, pickles, and carefully prepared delicacies could appear in refined combinations. The labor behind them was divided among trained kitchen court ladies and professional male cooks, especially for large events. The result looked serene because the kitchen had already spent hours being the opposite. The royal kitchen complex included spaces for daily meals, banquet and ritual cooking, and sweets, fruits, drinks, and refreshments. Names and arrangements shifted across time and palace, but late court testimony describes an inner kitchen for regular dishes, an outer kitchen for feasts, and the sangwabang for confections and beverages. Kitchens were placed with the danger of fire in mind, away from sleeping chambers. This protects the royal family while adding distance to every tray. You stand where steam clouds the rafters and discover that elegance begins with somebody squatting near a hot stove before sunrise. Kitchen hierarchy is as real as every other hierarchy. Experienced women control recipes through memory, touch, timing, and long apprenticeship. Written cookbooks exist in Joseon culture, and banquet protocols record astonishing detail. But daily palace cooking also passes from hand to hand. A senior can tell whether broth has gone too far by smell. She judges a paste by color, a rice cake by pressure, A pair, by the way, the knife enters. You arrive with the modern confidence of someone who has watched several cooking videos. The first onion-shaped object you cut emerges in pieces representing 7 unrelated philosophies. The work is seasonal. In spring, tender greens demand sorting and careful washing. Summer brings fruits, cooling preparations, and the constant problem of keeping ingredients from spoiling in heat. Autumn fills storerooms with grains, nuts, roots, mushrooms, and preserves. Winter depends upon what has been dried, salted, fermented, pickled, or stored. Ice cut and preserved in ice houses could serve elite needs, but you are unlikely to receive a personal cube for your aching neck. Fermentation jars sit in ordered rows, their contents developing flavor with less supervision than you currently require. Royal meals were not simply displays of appetite. They expressed health, season, balance, hospitality, and rule. Food arriving from different provinces could tell the court about harvests and conditions. A dish returning untouched might prompt questions about the king's health. Court ladies attending the table observed what was eaten and could report changes. In a court where direct access mattered, the tray became both nourishment and information. This is why your instruction to watch carefully includes the alarming possibility that the angle of a spoon may become medically relevant. Food safety deserves a calm correction to the dramas. The palace had reason to guard royal meals, but the popular image of a disposable maid eating every dish to test for poison is too simple. Ingredients, preparation, supervision, sealed or covered vessels, responsible officials, and layers of trusted service all formed part of security. Silver utensils sometimes appear in later royal dining culture, but silver is not a magical detector of every poison. More often the real dangers were ordinary: spoiled food, contamination, poor storage, smoke, a cracked vessel, or a cook distracted at the wrong time. History is very good at replacing cinematic danger with several less glamorous dangers that require more washing. You help assemble a tray, keeping colors and forms in balance. The court valued harmonious presentation and restrained seasoning that preserved the character of ingredients. A senior adjusts one garnish by the width of a grain. You had believed garnish was the optional leaf restaurants add when they have charged enough. Here it participates in order. Bowls, lids, stands, cloths, and tables have positions. Hot dishes must remain hot across courtyards. Cold preparations must not warm. Soup must travel without forming a decorative path behind you. The tray is heavier than it looks. You and another attendant move together, matching pace at thresholds. The palace's architecture now reveals a secret. Every beautiful raised sill was designed to test servants carrying liquid. You lift your foot, keep the tray level, lower the foot, and try not to imagine the sound of porcelain meeting stone. Tourists will one day admire these thresholds. They will take photographs while holding beverages in cups with lids. This feels personally insulting. At the royal residence, senior attendants receive and arrange the meal. You do not bustle around the diner like a modern server reciting ingredients. Court dining follows its own etiquette. Dishes are set. Attendants wait at a respectful position. Quiet observation matters. The finest ingredients of the kingdom are now within reach of one person, and you are close enough to smell toasted sesame, clear broth, warm rice, grilled fish, and fruit. Your stomach chooses this exact moment to speak. It makes a small sound, but in this silence it has the moral force of a temple bell. Nobody reacts. This mercy is more frightening than mockery. Later in the service quarters, you receive your own meal. Palace workers required rations, and surviving accounts indicate compensation and grain allocations within the household system, though the amount and form varied by status and time. Your bowl is plain compared with the royal table. Grain, soup or broth, vegetables, perhaps kimchi or another preserved side, with richer additions depending on circumstance. It is warm. You are hungry. The first mouthful tastes better than the 12 dishes you only smelled because it belongs to you. You eat quickly but not wildly. Seniority shapes seating portions and manners even here. Scraps may be used, leftovers distributed under rules, and kitchen economies watched. A palace serving hundreds cannot allow every worker to improvise with supplies. Rice is counted, cloth is counted, fuel is counted, oil is counted, dishes are counted, and eventually you suspect breaths would be counted if they could be stored in jars. Luxury at the center depends upon accounting at the edges. When the meal ends, the labor does not. Trays return. Dishes are inspected, washed, dried, and stored. Ash is cleared. Knives are cleaned. Ingredients are covered. Waste is sorted or carried away. Fires are banked or fed for the next preparation. The royal breakfast has become your late morning, and the royal midday refreshments are already becoming somebody else's urgent list. Your modern fantasy involved tasting palace delicacies while exchanging witty remarks with a prince. The reality is that you have spent 3 hours in steam, carried soup through an obstacle course, eaten in 12 minutes, and formed a serious emotional attachment to sitting down. Royal portraits encourage the belief that palace clothing simply exists in a state of permanent perfection. Robes fall in clean lines, white collars remain white. Silk catches the light without revealing soup, sweat, smoke, ink, dust, lamp oil, rain, or the ordinary evidence that a human body has occupied it. This visual miracle has an explanation, and the explanation is not divine favor. It is women examining cloth in service rooms, identifying stains by source, unpicking damaged seams, airing layers, washing what may be washed, and knowing which expensive fabric will become a historical tragedy if treated like a work shirt. The sesugen, often associated with washing and bathing service, helped manage the intimate work of cleanliness around royal residence. Other laborers washed garments and household cloth according to material and status. There was no single electric machine into which one could place a queen's jacket beside a kitchen rag and select delicate. Water had to be obtained and heated. Soap or alkaline cleaning agents had to be prepared and used with judgment. Cloth could be soaked, rubbed, beaten, rinsed, dried, stretched, pressed, and mended. Starch might restore body to cotton or ramie. White garments demanded repeated care. Dyed silk demanded restraint. Every method cost time, fuel, hands, and weather. You were given a small cloth with a faint mark and asked what caused it. You study it as if the stain might confess. A senior identifies oil, then shows how to lift it without spreading the edge. Her fingers work slowly. The palace does not confuse speed with haste when the object is valuable. You follow her instructions and produce a clean center surrounded by a larger pale cloud. The senior closes her eyes for one breath. This is the most dramatic response you have received all week. You are moved to a pile of plain cotton where your educational experiments can have fewer diplomatic consequences. Washing is also bodily service. Basins, towels, combs, hair oil, tooth cleaning materials, chamber vessels, bath water, and bedding all belong to routines that official paintings prefer to leave outside the frame. Joseon elites cared about cleanliness, presentation, and ritual purity, though methods differed from modern habits. Full immersion depended on circumstance. Washing the face and hands, tending hair, changing layers, and using scented preparations were part of cultivated life. A royal bath required privacy, temperature control, prepared water, clean cloths, and trusted attendants. For you, it requires carrying the temperature control in both arms. The first bucket is too cool. The next is hotter. The senior mixes them in a larger vessel and tests the water with experienced fingers. You wonder why the person bathing cannot simply add a little cold water herself. Then you remember that the entire institution is built around ensuring she never needs to reach for the cold water. Royal dignity is partly the freedom from discovering that the bucket handle has a splinter. Hair takes its own labor. Court hairstyles changed over the dynasty and differed by age, role, and occasion. Braids, knots, hairpieces, pins, ribbons, and ceremonial arrangements could demand time and assistance. Regulations sometimes attempted to control extravagant hairpieces because display could become expensive and excessive. For working attendants, hair needed to remain neat while allowing movement. A loose strand near food or a formal garment is not charmingly casual. It is proof that your head has failed to cooperate with the state. Bedding must be folded, aired, inspected, and changed. Lice, fleas, mold, smoke, and damp were familiar concerns in pre-modern households at every social level, although wealth gave the court more materials and labor with which to fight them. Paper windows breathe. Wood absorbs. Monsoon weather enters cloth as a smell before it appears as a stain. Winter bedding grows heavy with accumulated warmth in bodies. You learn to notice damp by touch and insects by the tiny signs they leave. This is less romantic than palace intrigue, but more likely to affect your sleep. There are chamber pots on latrine arrangements too, because Confucian ritual did not abolish digestion. Attendants remove waste discreetly, clean vessels, control odor, and maintain the separation between royal living space and the work required to sustain it. Lower-ranking servants carry much of this burden. The language surrounding such tasks may be refined, but the container remains a container. Your week now includes the important historical discovery that every golden age produced laundry and sewage at exactly the same time. Outside, sheets and plain cloth move in the breeze behind service walls. They cannot be displayed wherever visitors or officials might pass. The drying area has its own order, and sudden rain creates a silent emergency. Women hurry out gathering cloth before the drops darken it. You join them, arms full of cool fabric, laughing once when a corner falls over another girl's head. The laughter stops as a senior approaches, but her mouth almost smiles. For half a minute, the palace becomes an ordinary household surprised by weather. By afternoon, your hands are reddened from water and friction. The skin at the knuckles feels tight. In winter, repeated wet work can crack fingers. In summer, steam and damp cling to clothing. You cannot apply a modern barrier cream, put on waterproof gloves, and file an ergonomic complaint. You dry your hands, rub in what simple oil or salve is available, and continue. The people who wore the finished garments might never know which attendant's nail split while cleaning a collar. Invisibility, once again, is preserved through somebody's very visible discomfort. The clean cloth is carried back through the corridors, folded into exact, quiet rectangles. The senior checks your work. This time she finds no cloud around the stain because she wisely gave you no stained silk. She assigns you another plain piece. Progress in the palace is not a sudden promotion accompanied by music. It is being trusted with a slightly more difficult square of fabric while no one mentions yesterday's damage. The sewing room is calmer than the kitchen and more dangerous to your confidence. Women sit near the best available light with baskets, thread, silk, cotton, ramie, scissors, paper patterns, thimbles, cords, and unfinished garments arranged within reach. The chimbang managed sewing, while the subang specialized in embroidery. Their work supplied clothing and textiles for royal daily life and ceremony. These were not hobby rooms where attendants relaxed after more serious duties. Cloth represented money, rank, season, ritual, and the public image of the dynasty. A seam could be hidden, but its consequences could walk into a state ceremony. Joseon clothing was constructed from relatively simple pattern shapes with great skill and proportion, joinery, line, and finish. Jackets, skirts, robes, trousers, underlayers, socks, pouches, covers, screens, bedding, and ceremonial textiles all needed cutting and assembly. Fabric widths and valuable lengths were used carefully. A mistake in paper can be corrected with another sheet. A mistake in imported silk may be remembered by the finance office, your supervisor, and several ancestors who suddenly feel disappointed. You are asked to thread a needle. This is an insulting task until the thread refuses. The room's youngest trainee does it on the first attempt without looking up. You try again, bringing the needle so close that the eye becomes a doorway into another universe. When the thread finally passes, your face shows triumph. The senior woman points out that you have cut the end too long and will spend the next hour inviting knots. The needle, which has no rank, already possesses authority over you. Stitches must be even, tension-controlled, corners clean, and joins placed where they support the garment without disturbing its line. Hand sewing can be fast and trained hands. The women around you speak softly, while their fingers move at a pace your eyes cannot fully follow. One uses a thimble to drive the needle. Another rolls a seam so narrow it resembles a drawn line. A third unpicks work that would look perfect to you because it does not look perfect to her. Their expertise rarely appears in political histories, yet every formal image of the court passes through it. Embroidery adds another world of discipline. Motifs could carry wishes for longevity, fertility, authority, good fortune, fidelity, or harmony. Dragons, phoenixes, cranes, clouds, flowers, fruits, butterflies, and geometric borders were not interchangeable decorations. Design, color, stitch, placement, and recipient mattered. Gold thread did not exist to satisfy your urge to add sparkle. It belonged where rank and occasion permitted. You were given plain thread and a practice leaf, which gradually becomes a green object more closely related to a tired fish. The senior embroiderer does not insult the fish. She turns the frame and shows you how each stitch should follow the imagined vein, building direction rather than filling space blindly. Under her needle, the second leaf seems to grow. The lesson is gentle and devastating. You had thought patience meant remaining in one place for a long time. Here, patience is active attention repeated without resentment. You can remain seated for 2 hours while thinking about lunch. That is not the same skill. Work changes with the calendar. Seasonal clothing must be prepared before the season arrives, not after the first cold morning when everyone suddenly remembers sleeves. Ceremonies bring deadlines. A royal wedding, investiture, birthday feast, ancestral rite, funeral, or procession can require large quantities of prescribed textiles. Protocol books and diagrams may guide forms, while senior women translate those requirements into tasks. Measurements are checked, materials are issued, Teams work by lamp when necessary. The palace can move slowly for months and then demand 40 finished things by a date that was known only to people who did not have to sew them. Night work has its own clothing and hair arrangements for practical comfort, and research on court dress records attendants using simpler styles suited to remaining awake. Lamps create uneven light. Oil smoke darkens the air. Eyes ache, shoulders rise, fingers grow clumsy just when the seam must remain exact. You prick yourself and instinctively lift the finger toward your mouth. 3 women look at you. Blood must not reach the cloth. You wrap the finger, set the damaged needle aside, and learn that personal pain becomes urgent only when it threatens inventory. There are pleasures here too. Color gathers beautifully in the baskets. Deep indigo, soft jade, faded pink, yellow-green, white, russet, black, and red reserved according to use. Silk whispers when lifted. Fine ramie can feel cool and almost weightless. The women know materials by touch in low light. They discuss which weave behaves in humidity and which thread changes under lamp flame. Their conversation is technical, confident, and alive. For a listener drawn to the polished visual world of Korean performance, this is a useful reversal. The court's aesthetic did not descend from the sky. It was engineered by workers with sore backs and very strong opinions about thread. A finished garment is shaken out and held against the light. Seams align. Ties fall evenly. The shape is generous enough for movement but precise in its relation to the wearer. It will travel to another room, be inspected again, and perhaps appear for a single morning in a ceremony whose painted record survives for centuries. Your name will not be stitched inside. The palace does not sell limited editions signed by the production team. You return to your practice leaf. The next line improves. It is still not a leaf one would invite onto a royal robe, but it has stopped looking aquatic. The younger trainee beside you nudges a small scrap closer so your wrist rests more comfortably. Nobody speaks. The needles continue their soft passage through cloth, a tiny repeated sound like rain beginning far away. Luxury requires a storeroom, and a storeroom requires someone who distrusts everyone. The palace receives and consumes grain, cloth, paper, oil, candles, charcoal, wood, metalware, porcelain, medicine, spices, dried foods, fermented sauces, fruit, ceremonial goods, cleaning materials, and countless smaller objects. Some belong to state offices that provision the royal household. Some are managed within palace departments. All of them pass through hands, and every hand creates the possibility of error, loss, favoritism, or theft. This is why the woman holding the key looks at you as if you personally invented missing inventory. Senior court ladies could hold substantial responsibility for household property and distribution. Proximity to storerooms brought influence because supplies shape what every department can do. The key itself is not magical. The ledger, relationships, and authority behind it matter. A kitchen cannot prepare a dish without ingredients. A sewing room cannot meet a deadline without cloth. A lamp cannot burn without oil. Control the issue of materials and you control the pace of several lives, even if your formal title sounds domestic to an outside official. You accompany a request for lamp oil. The receiving woman has written the amount, the room, and the responsible senior's name. The storeroom keeper checks a record, inspects the container, measures the issue, and marks the transaction. You expected a palace to be mysterious. It is, but much of the mystery is paperwork. The Joseon state is famous for records, annals, royal secretariat diaries, ritual protocols, registers, maps, medical texts, and administrative documents. The inner household also depended upon lists and accounts, many written by people whose names were less carefully preserved than the quantities they counted. Hangul letters among palace women reveal networks of instruction, affection, negotiation, and power that formal male-authored histories often leave dim. A senior attendant might write to family, another courtwoman, or someone connected to a royal household. Such letters could move resources and requests as well as emotion. Writing gave women a means to manage complicated relationships across walls. It also created evidence. Every useful tool in a palace can become dangerous when read by the wrong person. Inside the storeroom, smells divide the shelves. Paper and cloth hold dry dust. Sesame oil carries warmth. Medicine drawers release roots, bark, resin, and herbs. Fermented sauces announce themselves without concern for rank. Metal vessels feel cold. Ceramic jars bear labels or occupy known positions. Goods must be protected from damp, insects, rodents, heat, frost, and human appetite. A palace mouse has no respect for the royal seal. It sees grain and interprets monarchy as a generous catering system. You help count candles? This seems easier than embroidery because candles are already candle-shaped. There are bundles of different size and quality for rooms of different importance. You reach 32, become distracted by a door, and continue from 38 with the confidence of a person who has betrayed arithmetic. The keeper asks for the total, then recounts in silence. She does not accuse you. She simply starts again, which ensures that you feel every number of your failure. Fuel may be even more important. Wood and charcoal warm Ondal floors, heat water, cook food, and sustain winter life. The quantity needed by a large palace is immense. Fuel must arrive, be stored safely, dried or protected, distributed, and burned by people who understand flues and fire. Too little makes rooms cold and meals late. Too much flame risks sparks, smoke, or damaged floors. The royal household's comfort rests on laborers carrying dark baskets whose dust enters the lines of their hands. Compensation for palace women varied. Ranked attendants received provisions and could receive stipends or grain according to system and period. Lower workers occupied different economic positions. Some court ladies accumulated personal goods or maintained family connections. Others remained vulnerable despite serving amid luxury. The contrast is central to palace life. You may handle silk finer than anything your family could buy, but it is not yours. You may arrange fruit from a distant province, but eating it without permission is theft. Access is not ownership. A lesson the storeroom repeats one locked door at a time. The keeper shows you how seals and wrappings reveal disturbance. A jar's lid is tied. A box is closed with paper or cord. A tally confirms movement. The purpose is not merely to catch a cartoon thief. Supplies leak away through small favors, generous portions, careless storage, broken vessels, mistaken counts, and people borrowing without returning. The institution answers with procedure. Procedure answers human creativity by becoming longer. When a cup is found cracked, responsibility moves backward through the chain. Who issued it? Who carried it? Who received it? Was the damage recorded? Did it occur before or after washing? You recognize the ancient ancestor of the workplace email copied to 6 supervisors? The difference is that nobody can attach a photograph, so the cup itself travels from room to room like a ceramic witness. Near evening, you return the unused oil. The container is measured again, your figures match. The keeper makes a mark and for the first time addresses you without the tone reserved for unstable furniture. This is another tiny palace promotion. You have not gained rank. You have become a person who can return oil. As the door closes, the storeroom settles into darkness. Shelves hold tomorrow's meals, warmth, letters, clothing, and ceremonies in compressed form. Outside, the palace appears to rest beneath elegant roofs. Inside, its future has been counted into jars. On the third day, the quiet routine tightens. A formal observance is approaching, not the largest state wedding or royal funeral, but an important household ceremony involving greetings, offerings, prescribed dress, food, attendance, and the careful movement of objects through designated spaces. Joseon court life was organized through rites. Confucian government treated correct ritual not as decorative tradition, but as a means of expressing relationships and maintaining order. Birthdays, marriages, investitures, ancestral observances, receptions, seasonal customs, and mourning each carried forms. The palace did not ask whether everyone felt festive. Feeling was private. The schedule had already been approved. Royal protocol books known as uigwe recorded major events with texts, diagrams, lists, personnel, materials, and sometimes vivid procession paintings. These records allowed later officials to repeat proper forms and now give historians extraordinary detail. They also revealed the enormous workforce behind a ceremonial image. Carpenters build temporary structures, painters decorate, officials plan, musicians rehearse, cooks prepare, tailors sew, laborers carry, court women arrange the intimate spaces, dress royal participants, prepare offerings, and ensure that every object waits where the ritual expects it. Your department receives a list. Cloths must be aired, screens moved, cushions covered, garments checked, hair ornaments arranged, hand-washing vessels polished, a refreshment tray coordinated with the kitchen, lamps filled in case the weather darkens the halls, spare ties, pins, thread, cloth, and towels packed where attendants can reach them without crossing the ceremonial space at the wrong moment. The list is detailed, which only reveals how many additional details exist between its lines. The senior women become quieter as work increases. This surprises you. You expected panic. Experience has taught them that panic takes up useful floor space. Instructions shorten. One woman checks textiles, another personnel, another routes. Younger attendants repeat assignments aloud. If someone is missing, a substitute must know more than the task. She must know where to stand. Ceremony turns geography into choreography. You polish a brass basin until the reflected ceiling stops looking like troubled water. Metal polish works into your fingers. The basin will hold clean water for a brief act and may be noticed only if it is dull. This is the general law of ceremonial labor. Hundreds of perfect objects produce a single impression of inevitability. One wrong object becomes a story. Dress rehearsal is literal. Royal and high-ranking women wore garments appropriate to status and occasion, including formal robes and elaborate hair ornaments. Court ladies assisting them had their own prescribed dress. Layers must be presented in order. Ties need to remain accessible. Heavy ceremonial clothing changes how a person sits, walks, and breathes. The attendant must support without tugging, smooth without fussing, and anticipate when a sleeve will catch. You practice with folded garments on a stand because no one intends to let your first attempt occur on the queen. In the courtyard, the route is swept again. Rain threatens. Weather has not read the protocol. Attendants discuss covered paths, cloth protection, and whether mats must be moved. A gust lifts one corner, and 4 girls reach it at once. There is no applause. Only a senior pointing to the next corner. The painted halls remain composed while everyone beneath the eaves negotiates with clouds. Music drifts from another compound. Court musicians tune wind, string, and percussion instruments whose sounds mark movement and dignity. Female performers might participate in dances and entertainments at feasts, though they belong to different occupational worlds from many resident court ladies. Popular dramas blur palace women together because matching costumes are visually efficient. The actual institution distinguished roles even while bringing them into the same event. You will not suddenly be asked to perform a flawless court dance because another attendant has twisted her ankle. You will be asked to carry more cushions. The ceremony begins. From your position, you see fragments, the edge of a robe, the line of attendants, hands lifting a vessel, heads lowering together, sunlight moving across the polished floor. Spoken formulas are measured. Each participant knows when to rise and turn. The whole scene creates a calm that seems to slow time. You know this calm is built over kitchen heat, needle pricks, arguments about oil, a near disaster with a mat, and your personal relationship with a brass basin. For several minutes, nothing goes wrong. Then a tie loosens at the back of an attendant's garment. A senior notices before the fabric shifts. Her hand moves once, shielding the correction with her sleeve. The line continues. Nobody outside your group sees. This is mastery. Not a world without mistakes, but a world in which trained people absorb them before they become visible. Afterward, the royal participants withdraw, officials disperse, and the palace exhales. Your work reverses itself. Vessels return. Garments are aired and inspected. Food is counted, distributed, or cleared. Temporary objects come down. Records note expenditure. Floors are checked. The ceremony that took months to plan becomes storage in an afternoon. You feel strangely proud, although your main contribution was polishing and remaining in the right place. At the evening meal, somebody finally makes a joke about the mat trying to join the procession. Laughter moves around the low table, quiet but genuine. Senior women allow it because the danger has passed. Ceremony is an emergency wearing silk, and you have survived this one with only sore knees, blackened fingers, and a growing respect for people who can correct a loose tie without changing expression. Your body believes the ceremony has earned its sleep. The duty roster disagrees. On the 4th night, you are assigned to remain awake with attendants outside a royal chamber. The palace cannot close like a shop. Royal people become thirsty, cold, restless, ill, or unexpectedly interested in documents after dark. Lamps require tending. Braziers and ondol fires require safe management. Doors must open for authorized physicians, eunuchs, messengers, or senior women. Security continues at gates and walls. The household sleeps in layers, with somebody always awake beneath another person's comfort. Night clothing for attendants could be arranged for easier work, with hair secured more simply than for formal daytime appearance. You change, fold your day garments, and report to a small service space lit by an oil lamp. The flame is modest. Oil costs money, smoke stains rooms, and fire never stops being a threat. The paper door beside you glows amber. Beyond it, a senior attendant sits with the composure of a carved figure. She has worked nights for years and seems to require neither movement nor thoughts. You possess an abundance of both. The first hour is almost pleasant. Daytime voices have faded. Painted eaves become dark silhouettes against the sky. Wind moves through pines beyond the wall. A guard's call travels from a distant gate, answered elsewhere. The palace reveals its size through sound. One cough, one sliding door, one bucket placed on stone, each separated by courtyards you cannot see. You begin to understand why so many sleep stories choose palaces. They are excellent at night when you're not employed by them. Your duties are simple. Keep water ready, watch the lamp, listen for the senior's instruction. Do not sleep. The simplicity becomes an enemy. In the kitchen, heat and knives force attention. Here, silence gives your mind a soft chair. Your eyelids lower by half. You correct them. Your head dips by the width of a plum blossom. You correct it. This senior makes no sound, but you feel her awareness cross the room like a draft. Court women serving close to royal residents needed intimate knowledge of habits. One person prefers a warmer room. Another wakes at a particular watch. A queen dowager may ask whether a younger relative has returned. A king may call for water, a chamber vessel, medicine, a document, or a change of bedding. Every request triggers a chain. The attendant nearest the room does not necessarily perform each task. She sends the proper person and preserves the boundary around the royal body. Rank determines who may approach. Experience determines who can do so without turning a small request into a crowded event. Near midnight, movement sounds within. The senior rises. Another woman warms water. You hold a cloth and wait. The door opens only enough for the necessary exchange. You glimpse a low lamp, bedding, the edge of a screen, and the shadow of a person sitting up. No crown, no throne, no orchestra. Royalty at night is still a tired human being whose hair has loosened. The glimpse feels more private than dramatic, and you immediately lower your eyes. The water is accepted. A question is asked about the hour. The senior answers. The door closes. Everyone resumes position. The whole event lasts less than 2 minutes. You have been awake for 3 hours to support it. This is the mathematics of service. Many people's time is gathered so one person's need can be met without waiting. Cold enters toward the darkest part of night. In a heated room, the floor near the flue may be warm while air by the door remains sharp. Service attendants occupy the doorway zone. You tuck your hands within your sleeves, careful not to look bundled. A charcoal brazier would offer comfort but risks fumes and fire in an enclosed space. Ventilation, fuel, and placement matter. Pre-modern warmth is never a button. It is a negotiation among smoke, labor, architecture, and the possibility of waking with a headache or not waking at all. You try to calculate how long remains, but palace time does not improve when watched. The lamp needs trimming. You lift the blackened wick with a tool and adjust it. The flame brightens, then steadies. Your fingers smell of oil. A moth appears despite the season, circles once with the ambition of a court climber, and lands somewhere sensible. Another trainee brings a small covered bowl for the senior. She moves so quietly that you envy her. The senior shares a warm sip with both of you after checking the corridor. It may be thin tea, roasted grain infusion, or simply warm water, but it reaches your stomach like kindness. The three of you sit without conversation. Night duty creates a companionship made mostly from not falling asleep in front of one another. Before dawn, the palace begins again. Kitchen smoke rises. Someone sweeps a courtyard. Bedding rolls in a distant room. The guards change. Your shift ends just as the people who slept begin to require proof that everything remained orderly. You return to the trainees' quarters expecting a generous morning of rest. Instead, you are told you may sleep briefly before a later assignment. The phrase, "sleep briefly," contains the same comfort as "eat lightly." It is permission-shaped like a warning. You lie on the warm section of floor and close your eyes. The room is already active around you. Cloth rustles. Someone practices letters. A box opens and shuts. You fall asleep anyway, because exhaustion is the most effective privacy screen the palace provides. Illness rearranges the palace faster than ceremony. A royal person who wakes feverish can summon physicians, alter meals, cancel meetings, change the work of kitchens and pharmacies, and place every attendant who noticed a symptom under sudden attention. Joseon maintains sophisticated medical institutions and records. Male physicians serve the royal household, but strict gender boundaries could limit their direct examination of royal women. Female medical practitioners, gungnyeo, were trained to examine women, assist with procedures, perform acupuncture within the scope allowed to them, and report findings to male doctors who prescribed. Court ladies also observed daily health because they were present when formal physicians were not. You are not a physician. This fact does not protect you from medical responsibility. If a royal resident eats less, sleeps poorly, coughs, develops a rash, complains of cold, or asks repeatedly for water, attendants must notice and report through the proper senior. They track stools, urine, appetite, menstruation, pain, mood, and sleep with a closeness that modern patients might find either reassuring or the end of personal dignity. The royal body is private in access but public in consequence. On your fourth afternoon, an older royal woman complains of dizziness. The senior attendant lowers the room's activity at once. A cushion is placed. Water arrives. Someone checks whether the room is too warm. Another sends word for medical assistance. You are told to fetch a small case from a designated cabinet. You repeat the location because carrying the wrong box into a royal illness is a reliable way to become historical in the least useful manner. The medicine room smells like dried earth after rain. Drawers and jars hold roots, bark, leaves, seeds, minerals, animal products, and prepared compounds used in East Asian medicine. Ingredients might be sliced, roasted, ground, steeped, boiled into decoctions, formed into pills, or made into plasters. Joseon medical texts drew upon long traditions while scholars and doctors compiled local knowledge. The Great Dongui Bogum, completed in the early 17th century, organized theory, diagnosis, materia medica, and treatment, and became influential far beyond the court. None of this means every treatment worked. It means illness was met with observation, accumulated practice, theory, and a pharmacy that could make your modern spice cupboard feel personally inadequate. You find the case, confirm its label with the responsible woman, and carry it back. The female practitioner has arrived. She speaks with the senior attendant, observes the patient, and may take the pulse or examine according to custom and permission. A screen preserves separation where needed. Information moves from patient to woman practitioner to physician, each step capable of losing detail. Court attendants who know the patient help translate ordinary condition into change. She usually drinks 2 cups by this hour, may matter more than she seems tired. Familiarity becomes clinical data. The prescribed decoction must be prepared exactly. Water quantity, boiling time, vessel, ingredients, and dose are controlled. The kitchen or pharmacy woman does not throw herbs into a pot until the liquid looks ancient. She measures. A covered earthenware vessel simmers over controlled heat. Steam carries bitterness through the room. You watch the volume reduce and realize that medicine has found a way to make waiting smell even longer. When the liquid is strained, its color is dark and its taste unlikely to attract volunteers. The cup is warmed, the rim cleaned, and the dose carried under supervision. Attendants may support the patient, hold cloths, and observe what is swallowed. If the medicine comes back up, that fact must be reported without creative editing. There is no cherry flavor, no capsule, and no promise that one dose will return the schedule to normal by morning. Medical care brings its own politics. If the patient is royal, outcomes can affect officials' careers. Physicians debate causes and treatments. Relatives worry. Factions may interpret health through succession and influence. Court women near the sick room can be praised for devotion or blamed for concealment. In famous cases, the annals record arguments over what was given and when. The attendant at the bedside may have little formal authority, yet carry knowledge everyone wants. For ordinary palace workers, care is less grand. A trainee with a swollen finger, cough, stomach pain, or menstrual discomfort may receive rest or treatment if seniors judge it necessary, but the household cannot stop for every ache. Women share remedies, warm cloths, rice gruel, massage, advice, and opinions inherited from relatives. Some advice helps. Some mainly proves that every workplace in history contained a person who believed ginger could solve your character. You begin to feel a headache from lost sleep. You say nothing until the girl beside you notices you squinting. She presses a cool cloth into your hand and takes your place near the hottest part of the room. Later, the senior sends you to eat before the evening shift. The kindness is practical. A fainting attendant creates paperwork. By night, the royal woman's dizziness has eased. The cause may have been heat, fatigue, missed food, an illness beginning, or something the records will never settle. The important fact for the palace is improvement. The physician's orders remain. The kitchen adjusts the next meal. An attendant stays close. You return the medical case and sign or report its return. The episode leaves you alert to every cough. Palaces in modern dramas overflow with rare poisons because ordinary infection lacks a villain. Real courts feared epidemics, respiratory illness, digestive disease, childbirth complications, chronic pain, and conditions no one could diagnose clearly. Wealth offered access to skilled care, good food, heating, and medicines, yet it also enclosed many people within connected rooms. A palace could protect a body and expose it at once. As you settle that evening, you hear someone clear her throat beyond the paper door. Your mind immediately invents 6 diagnoses and a succession crisis. Exhaustion has transformed you into the least qualified royal physician in Joseon. You pull the blanket higher and let the sound pass. By the 5th morning, you know enough names to become dangerous and not enough context to become wise. This is the ideal condition for gossip. A tray returned almost full. A senior attendant called to another residence after dark. New silk issued without a listed ceremony. A physician seen near the crown prince's quarters. A royal consort's brother waiting outside an office. Each fact may mean something ordinary. Together they invite a story, and the human mind dislikes an empty story more than it dislikes accuracy. The palace is divided into residences, but the people within them form networks. A queen, queen dowager, crown princess, royal consort, prince, or princess has attendants connected by service and loyalty. Senior women may spend decades with the same household. When a royal marriage brings a young bride into the palace, familiar attendants can offer continuity. When a new reign begins, older networks may lose influence or find new roles. The inner court is both home and institution, which means personal feeling and administrative power share corridors. Official Joseon ideology worried about private influence reaching the ruler. Male officials repeatedly criticized eunuchs, relatives, monks, shamans, royal in-laws, and palace women when they believed access threatened orderly government. Court ladies could carry requests because they crossed spaces officials could not, a favor for a family member, a message from a royal woman, or a recommendation about an appointment might move through intimate channels. Some attendants gained real influence. Most spent their lives doing work that never reached a political crisis. History remembers the unusual and then allows television to assign it to everyone. At breakfast, another trainee whispers that a senior from the sewing room has been summoned because a royal robe was damaged. She says the damage is shaped like a hand. The girl across from her insists it is wax. A third has heard there was no damage, the robe was requested for an unexpected visit. You contribute nothing, which is difficult, because your mind has already produced a complete plot involving a secret alliance and one tragic candle. The supervising woman enters. Conversation turns instantly toward radish soup. She does not accuse anyone. She remarks that soup cools quickly when too much breath is spent above it. This sentence travels through the table and lands on every guilty person. Palace discipline often works best when the rule is expressed as weather. Rumor carries emotional information as well. A royal woman cannot complain openly to everyone, but attendants notice tears, silence, poor appetite, or gifts sent and returned. A senior may decide which news to share and which to soften. Protection can shade into control. Loyalty to one residence can become suspicion toward another. Young attendants learn alliances through seating, errands, and the names that make a room quiet. You are sent to return a sewing frame. In the corridor, you pass 2 senior women speaking behind a half-closed door. One says, "Before the selection." The other responds, "Her family knows." You keep walking. The words follow. Selection could mean a bride selection, a staffing choice, an object chosen for ceremony, or nothing connected to you. By the time you reach the sewing room, your imagination has reorganized the royal family. This is why control of speech matters. A sentence removed from its room changes meaning. If repeated beyond the palace, it can affect reputations or invite official scrutiny. Punishments for illicit communication and sexual relations involving court women could be severe. Men were restricted from the women's quarters, and palace gates regulated movement. Court ladies were expected to preserve chastity and exclusive loyalty to the royal household. The system treated their private relationships as institutional concerns. K-dramas often give the inner court an investigation bureau with ranks of determined women searching rooms. Historical discipline was less tidy. Senior attendants, designated inspectors, residence heads, eunuchs, guards, and officials could all become involved depending on the issue. There was no permanent television-style detective office waiting for the week's mystery. Investigation might mean questioning, searching possessions, checking gates, comparing accounts, beating or other punishment under the legal norms of the time, and pressure that fell hardest on lower status people. The fear of accusation changes behavior before any accusation exists. You keep personal letters carefully. You do not accept gifts you cannot explain. You avoid being alone near restricted doors. You learn who may carry messages outside. A modern worker can resign after an office rumor becomes unbearable. A palace woman's identity, livelihood, and residence are bound together. The group that feeds her is the group that judges her. Still, people cannot live without stories. In the evening, older women tell approved tales, memories of previous ceremonies, eccentric habits of long-dead attendants, mistakes that are safe because everyone involved has retired. Humor disguises instruction. The tale of a girl who wore 2 mismatched socks teaches checking in dim light. The story of a servant who confused identical jars teaches labels. A remembered winter when the water froze teaches keeping a covered vessel near warmth. Oral history lives in laughter because ledgers do not record how cold the floor felt. You finally learn the truth about the damaged robe. There was no secret alliance. A storage fold had set badly in the damp, and the sewing room senior was called to correct it before an ordinary household greeting. The mysterious family discussed behind the door belonged to a new kitchen worker. Your elaborate theory collapses without leaving ruins. That night you promise yourself never to gossip. The promise lasts until someone mentions that the head storeroom woman once refused a gift from a royal uncle and made him wait 3 days for lamp oil. You lean closer. Survival may require silence, but being human keeps interfering. On the 5th afternoon, the supervising attendant reviews conduct. She does not present the rules as suggestions for a harmonious workplace. Palace regulations concern attendance, dress, speech, property movement, relations with outsiders, sexual behavior, ritual correctness, fire, and service. Some are formal law. Others are household procedures strengthened by custom and senior authority. The distinction matters if a magistrate becomes involved. It matters less when you're kneeling before the woman who controls your duty roster. Joseon law recognized social status with uncomfortable precision. Government slaves, commoners, officials, royal relatives, and palace personnel did not meet punishment from equal positions. The court's female officers occupied defined ranks. But many palace workers came from low-status backgrounds. A senior court lady could command respect inside while remaining vulnerable to officials outside. The palace gave some women authority over others without dismantling the wider hierarchy that had brought them there. Punishment within the household might include reprimand, loss of privileges or provisions, demotion, confinement, expulsion, or corporal punishment, depending on offense and era. Serious cases could pass to legal authorities. Historical records include court women questioned over theft, illicit contact, sorcery accusations, political messages, and involvement in royal household scandals. These records are dramatic because quiet competence produces fewer interrogations. The average attendant's best strategy is to remain unrecorded. Your offense is not serious. You placed a used cloth in the basket reserved for clean ones. Another girl noticed before damage occurred. The senior asks how it happened. You consider explaining that the baskets look similar, the light was poor, and you had slept for less time than a modern airport layover. Instead, you say you failed to check. This answer is both true and acceptable. The baskets are moved farther apart, and you are assigned to inspect every cloth in both. Discipline produces labor, which produces memory. You kneel while checking. Kneeling and sitting on the floor are normal parts of life, but normal does not mean effortless for a body trained by chairs. Ankles flex. Knees bear pressure, the lower back complains. People accustomed from childhood develop different comfort and technique, yet long service still wears joints. Senior women may carry decades of standing, kneeling, lifting, sewing, and sleeping near variable heat. Their controlled gait can hide pain. The palace rewards a body for not reporting itself. Rules of movement are especially strict after dark. Gates close, names and reasons are checked. Servants who need to leave or enter require permission. Musuri and outside workers may follow different arrangements from resident court ladies. Deliveries pass through guarded points. A private meeting with a man is not merely romantic rebellion. It threatens the gendered boundaries upon which the inner court's legitimacy is built and can expose both people to harsh consequences. This helps explain the strange legal fiction surrounding ranked palace women. Because they were attached to the king's household, they were not ordinarily free to marry. Even if the king never knew a woman's name, her sexual and marital life could be treated as belonging within his domain. A tiny number of attendants attracted royal favor and might become special court ladies or royal concubines, especially if they bore a child. Popular culture expands this possibility until every corridor feels like an audition. For most women, proximity to the king was work, and romantic notice could be disruptive, dangerous, or unwanted. You are instructed on gifts. Food from family, cloth, medicine, money, and personal items may need declaration or approval. Gifts can carry obligation. A valuable object from someone outside may be a bribe. A small object passed between friends may be harmless until discovered during an investigation. You begin to view every pretty hairpin as a legal document with a sharp end. Fire rules return because fire is the palace's most democratic threat. No rank can order a wooden roof not to burn. Lamps are counted. Braziers placed on safe surfaces. Kitchen embers managed. Chimneys and flues maintained. Night attendants monitor heat. Smoking where prohibited. Carrying uncovered flame or leaving fuel carelessly could invite punishment. The calm amber lighting beloved by historical dramas represents several hundred people quietly preventing the set from disappearing. There are rules for mourning and ritual purity, clothing for occasions, responses to births and deaths, and behavior during royal travel. When the court moves to another palace or temporary residence, attendants pack not only garments but the organization itself. Kitchens, bedding, documents, medicines, vessels, screens, and personnel travel in planned order. You cannot place everything in a cart labeled miscellaneous palace stuff. The rules describe sequence because sequence prevents confusion at gates. By the end of the review, you feel that spontaneous movement has been outlawed, yet senior women explain the reason beneath the form. A large household filled with precious goods, open flames, private bodies, political tension, and hundreds of workers cannot depend on everyone having a good instinct at the same time. Procedure allows strangers and successors to repeat necessary actions. It protects as well as confines. The problem is that protection rarely asks how it feels to be protected all day. You finish inspecting the cloth. None is damaged. The senior tells you to mark the baskets more clearly for trainees. This surprises you. You expected only blame, but competent discipline improves the system. You paint or stitch a small sign, one recognizable, even in dim light. Tomorrow, another exhausted girl may avoid your mistake. The rule acquires a rule, and the palace becomes slightly easier to survive. After 5 days, the other trainees no longer feel like strangers. You know who wakes instantly, who hides rice until it cools, who whispers in her sleep, who can imitate the storeroom keeper's expression, and who cries only while watching because water provides an excuse. Shared quarters compress intimacy. Bedding touches. Clothing hangs side by side. Illness, homesickness, embarrassment, and small triumphs become difficult to conceal. Privacy is not a separate room. It is the courtesy of looking away. Court women formed relationships that could last a lifetime. Some entered as children and aged together under several royal households. Senior-junior bonds combined teaching, authority, affection, and dependence. A mentor could protect a younger attendant, recommend her, punish her, or shape her whole career. Women also form chosen sister relationships and close emotional partnerships. Surviving sources hint at affection that official categories do not fully describe. The palace's insistence on female seclusion produced not isolation from relationship, but a dense world of relationships among women. The girl who first made room for your bowl is named only within this fictional week, because most real attendants remain unnamed in the record. We will call her Yeonhwa, Lotus Blossom, not because every Joseon woman was named like a drama heroine, but because sleep stories occasionally need a person one can find again. She entered 2 years before you, and therefore possesses ancient wisdom, including the location of the least smoky lamp and a method for sleeping through someone folding bedding 6 inches from your head. Yeonhwa shows you a small packet of paper kept beneath her clothing box. Inside is a letter from an older brother written in rough Hangul. A family acquaintance carried it through approved hands. The message contains no secret politics. Their mother's knee hurts in rain. A neighbor's roof has been repaired. A dog has had puppies. Ordinary news becomes precious because the gate has made it distant. Yeonhwa reads the line about puppies twice. Some palace women maintained contact with families and could send resources or gifts. Others became remote from kin, especially when service began young. Family might view a court connection as useful, honorable, burdensome, or all three. A successful senior attendant could assist relatives, while a scandal could harm them. The woman inside carries obligations outward even when she cannot walk through the gate freely. You have no letter yet. You pretend this is fine. Yeonhwa knows it is not and offers to help you compose one. Palace writing favors clear, graceful forms. But your first letter home does not need to become calligraphic art. You begin with health and obedience. You avoid saying the work is hard because your mother will worry. You avoid saying the palace is beautiful because beauty feels like betrayal. At last you write about the way frost stayed beneath the shaded wall after sunrise. It is a fact you can both imagine. The letter must pass through someone trusted. Nothing guarantees speed. You fold it, then unfold it to correct one character, then fold it again. Your fingerprints leave faint marks. A future archive will not preserve this invented sheet. Most private messages vanish. Their loss is part of history. Millions of ordinary feelings supported the few words that survived. Friendship also creates risk. If Yeonhwa makes a mistake, do you report it? If she hides illness to avoid losing an assignment, do you help? If a senior favors one of you, can the other remain generous? Palace hierarchy turns affection into a series of tests. The two of you promise not to compete. This is easy because neither currently possesses anything worth competing over except the warm floor space. Older women warn against exclusive loyalties that interfere with duty. Their concern is practical. A pair that covers each other's errors can damage the household. A clique can bully outsiders. Gifts create factions, yet the institution depends on trust among people handling private bodies and valuable objects. It demands loyalty while supervising it, which is a very palace-shaped contradiction. At the evening meal, one trainee receives word that her father is ill. She cannot simply run home. Permission, household need, status, and severity shape whether leave is possible. The senior woman sits beside her after the others finish. We do not hear their conversation. Later, the girl is told she may send a message and will be considered for a brief visit if news worsens. Compassion arrives through procedure, slower than grief wants. That night, the group makes space around her bedding. Someone shares a warmer quilt. Someone else tells a deliberately dull story about sorting chestnuts until the anxious girl's breathing eases. No one says the perfect thing because no perfect thing exists. They remain near. This too is palace labor, though no department claims it. You lie awake for a few minutes listening to the women breathe. The court's official order places each person beneath another rank, but darkness softens the visible signs. Hair is loosened, jackets are folded, titles sleep against the wall. Tomorrow the hierarchy will be tied back on with the skirts. For now, a hand reaches across the narrow gap and finds yours beneath the edge of the quilt. Our imagined week has been moving through late autumn, when the mornings sharpen and every room begins negotiating with winter. Seoul sits within a landscape of mountains and strong seasons. Winter can be dry and bitterly cold, summer hot, humid, and wet. The palace roofs, courtyards, paper windows, wooden walls, and heated floors respond beautifully in paintings and imperfectly in human bodies. Royal architecture organizes space according to status and ritual, but wind remains socially ambitious. It searches for the lowest gap and usually finds the attendant standing beside it. The ondal floor is one of the great comforts of Korean domestic architecture. Fire heats a cooking or furnace area, and hot air passes through flues beneath masonry before leaving by a chimney. Heat rises into the floor, where bedding and seated bodies receive it directly. The system can cook, warm, and structure family life around the heated room. It can also produce hot spots, cold spots, smoke leaks, fuel demands, and strong opinions about where everyone sleeps. You discover that seniority is measurable in inches from the warmest section. Fuel workers deliver wood and charcoal. Furnace attendants understand when to feed the fire and how the flue draws in different weather. Ash must be removed without spreading sparks. Rooms are aired even when opening a door feels like inviting a mountain inside. Paper on lattice windows can be repaired, sometimes oiled for protection, but thin material never becomes a stone wall. It filters light wonderfully and wins selectively. Royal residents receive quilted garments, layered bedding, hand warmers, braziers, and heated rooms according to need. Attendants prepare each comfort. Cotton padding must be kept dry and evenly distributed. Fur, silk, and lined garments are aired. A brass or ceramic warming vessel may be filled safely and wrapped. Charcoal is chosen and burned with ventilation. The closer you work to luxury, the more clearly you see its ingredients. Somebody carried it, cleaned it, checked it, and will remove it after use. Your own winter clothing is practical but finite. You layer jackets and tie the skirts securely. Cotton wadding adds warmth and bulk. Socks and shoes must stay dry, which the morning frost treats as a personal challenge. Hands disappear into sleeves whenever duty permits. Your nose is cold enough to become a separate employee, one who contributes nothing. Waterwork becomes cruel. Ice forms in shallow basins. Pumps, wells, or jars require breaking and tending. Hot water cools during the walk from kitchen to chamber. A wet hem stiffens. Fingers lose precision just when knots and lids need it. The senior woman tells you to wrap the bucket handle with cloth, a simple improvement learned through generations of cold hands. Historical innovation often looks less like a machine and more like somebody finally refusing to grip frozen wood directly. Food shifts toward stored grains, roots, dried greens, seaweed, salted fish, fermented sauces, and kimchi prepared during the autumn preserving season. Royal tables still receive variety, but even they follow season and transport. Workers eat warming soups and porridges when available. Steam rises from the communal bowl. Conversation pauses because holding warm food is a form of concentration. Winter also brings illness. Coughs move through shared rooms. Smoke irritates eyes and lungs. Cold stiffens joints. Nutritional reserves matter. A royal person may have physicians in specialized diets. A young attendant has yonhua, pressing half a roasted chestnut into her palm. You accept it with the solemn gratitude appropriate to half a chestnut in November. Night duty is harder. The sky clears and loses heat. Stars appear sharp above the roofline. You stand beneath the eaves with a lamp shielded from wind. A senior checks that the sleeping room's floor is warm but not overheated. Charcoal fumes are watched. The doors remain closed as much as possible, yet each request opens a bright seam into the cold corridor. Service exists in the seam. On the 6th morning, frost whitens the bridge rail near a garden pond. You cross with folded clothing and pause only because the attendant ahead pauses. Thin ice has formed along the edge. Reeds stand motionless. For a few breaths, the palace is quiet enough that you hear a magpie move between branches. The beauty is not provided for your recreation, but you receive it anyway. This is how people endure difficult institutions, not through endless courage, but through small, unauthorized moments of noticing. Warm floor under tired feet. Chestnut shared from a sleeve, sunlight through paper, a frost line on a dark tile. The palace takes most hours and accidentally leaves a few seconds between them. Then the girl ahead turns. The clothing must arrive before the next greeting. You continue across the bridge, careful on the stone. Winter has found the service door, and you have learned to close it without making a sound. To understand why 1 week could defeat you in any season, let the cold courtyard dissolve into summer. The palace changes color. Maples and pines deepen, cicadas fill the air, and humidity rests on the wooden buildings like another roof. Paper doors stand more open where privacy allows. Bamboo blinds filter light. Clothing becomes lighter, with fine ramie and hemp valued for their coolness. Work does not become lighter. It becomes damp. The monsoon rains, jungma, can settle over the capital in long gray spells. Roof tiles channel torrents from curved eaves. Courtyard drains must remain clear. Paths turn slick. Walls absorb moisture. Clothing and bedding resist drying. Mold appears in boxes that were perfectly respectable a week earlier. Every department becomes partly responsible for water, either keeping it out, carrying it in, or wishing it would choose one direction. You wake to rain striking the roof with such steady force that ordinary speech sounds private. Service routes change. Trays receive covers. Cloth is wrapped in oiled paper or protected beneath umbrellas and rain capes. Footing matters more than speed. The stone threshold, already your enemy, has become polished evidence against you. You shorten your steps and carry a box of hair ornaments as if escorting a very small royal family. The kitchen is hotter in summer. Fires cannot be canceled because the air feels unreasonable. Cooks work beside steam while ingredients spoil more quickly. Fish and meat require careful handling. Fruits must be inspected. Cool dishes and drinks take additional preparation. Ice stored from winter in official ice houses was a rare and valuable resource distributed to the court and officials under regulation. The king may receive a cooled refreshment. You receive the philosophical comfort of knowing ice exists somewhere in government custody. Mosquitoes do not recognize inner court rank. Nets, smoke, fans, and herbs help discourage them, but shared rooms and standing water invite insects. Flies require vigilance near food. The elegant gesture of a fan in a painting has a practical side, moving air, cooling skin, and informing a mosquito that its audience request has been denied. Summer uniforms and hair must remain neat despite sweat. The back of your jacket clings. Powder or cosmetic preparations can soften shine for elite women, but the attendants applying them are shining freely. Hair oil and humidity conduct private negotiations. A senior adjusts a royal woman's coiffure while another fans from the side. You hold pins. One slips in your damp fingers, and you catch it against your sleeve before it falls. The senior gives you the nod. Your entire career continues by the width of one hairpin. Rain threatens palace records and textiles. Storeroom women move boxes away from damp walls, check roofs, air papers when weather clears, and burn or place insect-repelling substances according to practice. Books may be dried and aired on selected days. Cloth is unfolded so moisture cannot settle into permanent damage. The palace owns more objects than any one roof should be trusted to protect. Thunder rolls over the mountain. Lightning is not merely atmospheric drama, it can start fires. Guards and workers watch roofs. Firefighting jars fill naturally, which is the one task rain performs without complaint. A leak appears in a service corridor. Bowls are placed beneath it. The first fills. Another replaces it. You spend part of the afternoon operating the palace's earliest subscription-based water feature. The rain stops near dusk, and heat rises from the wet stones. Frogs begin in the garden. The smell of earth enters the courtyards. Attendants open what can be opened, wipe what can be wiped, and hang what can be hung. Fabric appears along hidden service lines like pale flags of surrender. Summer nights are restless. Warm floors are no longer desired, but the architecture still holds the day. Mosquito nets reduce air. Cicadas continue until another insect takes the next shift. You turn your pillow to find a cooler surface and discover Yeonhwa has done the same at exactly the same time. The two of you begin to laugh, then stop because the room is sleeping. In this season, you would fail not from one dramatic task, but from accumulation. Wet socks, hot kitchens, heavy trays, insects, mildew, interrupted sleep, and the expectation that silk should remain serene while every human inside it is damp. The royal household preserves an image of composure through climate by distributing climate among workers. At last, rain begins again, softer now. Drops move along the eaves. The sound fills the room and smooths away smaller noises. For once, the weather helps with sleep. You let the palace grow indistinct behind the rain, though somewhere a night attendant is already checking the drain. Wooden architecture gives Joseon palaces warmth, flexibility, beauty, and an appetite for sparks. Major palace complexes suffered repeated fires across history, caused by war, accident, heating systems, kitchens, lamps, and the ordinary vulnerability of timber buildings. Changdeokgung itself was destroyed during the Japanese invasions of the late 16th century, rebuilt, and later damaged again by fire. The palace you serve understands impermanence. Its painted surfaces are maintained in the shadow of previous ash. Fire prevention is therefore not an occasional lecture. Large water containers, accessible wells, ladders, tools, watchmen, and procedures form part of palace safety. Buildings may be separated by courtyards and walls that slow spread. Kitchens stand away from main sleeping halls when possible. Chimneys carry ondol smoke outward. But flame remains everywhere, cooking fires, braziers, candles, oil lamps, incense, furnaces, and torches. Darkness is safer for the roof and inconvenient for almost everything else. On the sixth evening, a shout comes from beyond the service wall. It is not the sound used for ceremony. Someone smells smoke near a storage shed. The palace changes immediately. A bell or call passes the warning. Assigned workers move toward water and tools. Others close doors, clear paths, protect royal residents, or remain in place to avoid adding bodies to a narrow yard. You are told to carry a water jar to the line and not to run. Do not run is excellent advice delivered to a person whose entire nervous system has begun running internally. You lift the jar with another trainee. Water presses against the sides, shifting the balance. Women ahead pass buckets. Guards and male workers join where the space allows. Smoke threads above a roof, thin but visible against dusk. The source is a brazier coal that fell near stacked kindling. It has charred a board and begun to catch the dry edge of a bundle. Someone saw it early. Water strikes. The coal hisses. Wet ash spreads across the ground. A senior checks beneath the stack, then orders more water because fire can hide inside material and return after people congratulate themselves. The event lasts minutes. Your body experiences an entire rain. No hall burns, no royal procession flees beneath a red sky. The most important person in the story is the worker who smelled smoke before flame climbed the wall. She may receive praise or simply return to duty after answering questions. Disaster prevention rarely looks heroic because its success removes the disaster. An inquiry follows. Who last used the brazier? Was it placed on a stable base? Who checked the yard? Why was kindling stacked so near? The answers matter, but blame alone cannot repair a procedure. The area is cleared. Coal containers receive lids. Stacks move. Night rounds increase. The palace remembers through rules because timber cannot afford nostalgia. You smell smoke on your clothes after changing. It sits beneath the cleaner scent of soap and fabric. Sleep resists. Every small crack sounds like a beam. Every warm patch beneath the floor feels newly suspicious. Yeonhwa tells you the room has been heated safely for years. You answer that many fires begin after years without one. She says, this is not helpful. Both statements are correct. Fire shapes court aesthetics in ways visitors may not notice. Paint must be renewed. Buildings are rebuilt according to memory, plan, and changed needs. Archives move or vanish. Textiles and furniture are designed to be carried but cannot all be rescued. A palace is not a frozen survivor from one perfect year. It is a sequence of repairs, losses, reconstructions, and people deciding that beauty should be attempted again. The household's fear is compounded by political memory. War burned palaces.
Yes.
Rebellion threatened gates. A flame might signal accident or attack. Smoke near a royal residence can create panic beyond its size. Attendants are taught roads and priorities. People first, then necessary royal objects and documents according to instruction. You are not to rescue your favorite embroidery frame while leaving a princess behind, even if the princess has been difficult all week. Near midnight, a senior leads another inspection. You accompany her with a covered lamp. The damaged board is wet and black. The air is cold. She places her palm near the wood without touching, checks for heat, and waits. Patience is part of firefighting too. A hidden ember reveals itself through warmth, smell, or smoke if given time. Nothing returns. The stars remain visible. You carry the lamp back between buildings whose painted beams fade into darkness. Each roof now seems both solid and temporary. The people sleeping beneath them trust workers they will never see to keep flame inside its proper containers. At the service room, you trim the lamp carefully. The small flame steadies behind its shade. Fire has cooked your rice, warmed your floor, boiled medicine, lit your needle, and nearly eaten a shed. You bow to no element, but you treat this one with something very close to respect. Royal households organize themselves around continuity. Marriages are arranged, pregnancies watched, births recorded, children named and raised, elders honored, ancestors served, and deaths mourned according to rank and ritual. Court women stand close to every stage. They prepare bridal rooms, observe menstrual cycles, assist royal women through pregnancy, summon medical practitioners, wash newborns, manage clothing, supervise nurses, comfort children, dress the dead, and maintain mourning spaces. The dynasty may be written as a line of kings. Inside the palace, that line begins in women's rooms. Childbirth is dangerous in every pre-modern society. Elite status offers food, warmth, attendants, midwives, female physicians, and access to male doctors through established channels, yet hemorrhage, infection, obstructed labor, premature birth, and postpartum illness remain beyond complete control. The palace watches a royal pregnancy with hope and political anxiety. The child's sex, health, and maternal lineage can affect succession. A woman experiences labor while an institution waits outside her body. You do not witness a birth during this week. Instead, the senior attendant uses a quiet afternoon to inventory birth supplies for a royal relation expected to deliver in another residence. Clean cloths, wrapping bands, bedding, warmed water vessels, scissors or cutting tools, medicines, screens, and infant clothing are checked. The practical list cuts through ceremonial language. A newborn needs warmth. A laboring woman needs support. Blood must be managed. Instruments must be cleaned by the standards available. Nothing about lineage makes a wet cloth replace itself. Palace women could become nurses and caregivers with enduring influence. A bomo sanggung, a senior nurse attendant, might raise a prince or princess and remain emotionally significant into adulthood. Wet nurses also occupied important roles, selected for health and circumstance. The woman who feeds, carries, soothes, and sleeps near a royal infant learns its habits before any tutor teaches it virtue. Years later, ministers may bow to a king whose first political negotiation was with a nurse refusing to let him eat a bead. Child care demands endless ordinary work. Cloth diapers must be washed, bedding changed, rooms warmed without overheating, food prepared as children grow, illness observed, lessons scheduled, clothing expanded, toys and books kept. Royal children live under protocol but still dislike bitter medicine, wake from dreams, hide objects, and ask questions at the moment adults are least prepared. Court attendants become the boundary between a child's private self and the public role waiting outside. Mourning creates another transformation. When a royal person dies, clothing, food, sound, color, schedule, and space change. Confucian funeral rites can extend through long sequences of preparation and commemoration. The body is washed and dressed. A mourning hall is established. Offerings are made. Spirit tablets, coffins, processions, tomb preparations, and official rituals involve vast organizations. Royal women and court ladies perform duties within the inner quarters while male officials manage other aspects. Grief receives an administrative structure because the state cannot stop being a state even when its center dies. For attendants, Death may be both personal and occupational. A woman may have served the deceased since childhood, known every illness, held every garment, and watched age change the face behind the title. At death, she must continue working. Bedding is removed, personal objects inventoried, messages carried, mourners dressed, food prepared for others who have forgotten to eat. The palace asks grief to hold a tray. Mourning rules vary by relationship and rank. White or undyed clothing, subdued appearance, restrictions on music and celebration, prescribed periods and ritual gestures express order among the living and dead. The atmosphere can extend through the whole court. Kitchens change dishes. Sewing rooms produce garments. Storerooms issue plain cloth. Musicians fall silent or perform only what rite requires. A death moves through departments like winter. Lower status deaths leave smaller official traces. A court woman who dies may receive provisions and arrangements according to standing, family, and household custom, but she does not command a state funeral. Friends fold her bedding. A box is returned. A place at the meal remains empty until the group learns not to look. The institution continues, which can feel cruel and also allows survivors to move through the next hour. The senior woman shows you a tiny infant jacket stored for use. Its sleeves are astonishingly small. You think of the grand language surrounding royal succession and the fragile arms that must enter them. Dynasties begin not with statues, but with somebody supporting a newborn's head. You fold the jacket along the demonstrated line. The task is gentle. No one rushes. Outside leaves move along the courtyard edge. The palace holds preparation for a birth in one box, mourning cloth in another, and ordinary work between them. It is a household that never stops because life does not arrive in separate departments. The visual memory of Joseon court women comes to us through paintings, garments, ornaments, records, later photographs, surviving objects, and modern reconstruction. It is easy to reduce this world to beautiful hanbok glossy hair, pale skin, and composed faces. Within the palace, appearance was not a free-floating ideal. It was work shaped by rank, age, occasion, morality, and the requirement that the royal household present order through bodies. Women's everyday clothing included jacket and skirt with underlayers, their proportions changing dramatically across the dynasty. Court dress differed from common dress in material, color, formality, and permitted ornament. A senior attendant's garment could signal position, while a trainee's hairstyle marked youth. Court ladies wore cloth and colors suited to season and duty. Formal occasions added robes such as the wonsam or dangui for appropriate wearers and roles. No single silhouette represents 500 years, despite the best efforts of costume rental shops. Morning grooming begins with clean hands and an inspection. Hair is combed, parted, braided, knotted, or arranged. Natural hair may be supplemented according to period and status. Oils smooth and condition. Ribbons, pins, and hairpieces secure the style. The face is washed. Simple cosmetics can include powders, plant-based color, oil, rouge, or preparations for brows and lips, especially among elite women and for ceremony. Ideals favor refinement and restraint rather than the modern camera's appetite for contour. You assist while a senior dresses a royal woman for a family visit. The undergarments create shape and cleanliness. The skirt ties high around the torso according to late Joseon style. The jacket sits short and precise. Collars must align. White sleeve cuffs and neck strips show dirt immediately, a feature that seems designed to support the laundry department. The outer layer settles. Every line appears effortless only after several women have circled it with concentrated faces. Jewelry and hair ornaments carry meaning. Pins can be made from metal, jade, coral, wood, bone, or other materials, with motifs suited to wearer and event. Some ornaments mark marriage or rank, some offer wishes for long life and fortune. Norigate pendants hang from ties, combining decorative knots, tassels, precious materials, and sometimes practical objects or scent containers. They move beautifully when the wearer walks. They also catch on things when the attendant is inexperienced, which is why you keep your hands ready. Scent matters in close rooms. Incense perfumes spaces and ritual. Sachets hold fragrant materials. Hair oils and washing preparations carry subtle smells. The goal is not to create a cloud announcing arrival 3 courtyards away. Smoke, fermented food, bodies, medicine, wood, paper, and seasonal air already compose the palace scent. Fragrance joins a crowded committee. Beauty rules express discipline. A court woman should appear neat and modest, not compete with royal women, and not use colors or ornaments beyond her standing. Clothing violations can be read as moral violations because appearance communicates place. This can feel oppressive to a modern listener. Yet modern workplaces also issue visual codes. Only ours may involve an email about business casual that clarifies nothing. The physical cost hides under layers. Tight ties press. Heavy hair arrangements pull. Long hours in formal dress restrict movement. Summer fabric may be fine but still layered. Winter padding adds weight. Shoes are made for the period's floors and gait, not for sprinting through a train station. A palace attendant learns how to carry her clothing without letting it carry her into a wall. Royal women experience a different burden. Their appearance is observed as evidence of virtue, health, fertility, mourning, favor, and household harmony. A tired face can produce rumor. A new ornament can be interpreted as preference. Clothing from a king may signal favor. Clothing sent to another residence may perform respect. Dress is both intimate surface and public message. The attendants fastening it understand the message while touching the human shoulders beneath. When the visit ends, the process reverses. Pins are counted. Garments examined for stains or strain. Jewelry returned to boxes. Hair loosened. The royal woman rubs the place for a pin pressed all morning. For one moment, her expression resembles yours after kneeling. Rank distributes comfort unevenly, but ceremonial clothing can annoy almost everyone. Back in the service room, Yeonhwa offers to fix your braid. She smooths the uneven section and reties the ribbon. You ask whether it looks better. She says it looks obedient. This is not the compliment you expected, but it may be the most accurate definition of palace style. The bronze mirror gives a softer reflection than modern glass. Your face appears within the dim metal, framed by hair arranged according to a system you barely knew a week ago. You look neither like an idol nor a drama heroine. You look tired, younger than you feel, and strangely composed. Beauty has become another shift, and for today, your shift is over. Most palace women lived between the lines of records, but a few entered the historical text sharply enough to attract later legend. Their stories help us understand what was possible, yet they can also distort the ordinary life around them. If one court lady rose to become a royal consort, drama begins to imply that every girl carried a secret route to the throne. If one woman practiced medicine near a king, fiction builds an entire modern career ladder behind her. Exceptional lives are windows, not floor plans. Changdeokgung is the most famous name. The annals of the Joseon dynasty mention a female medical practitioner called Changdeokgung during the reign of King Jungjong in the 16th century. She received recognition and treated members of the royal family, including the king. The surviving references are brief. They do not give us the complete childhood, kitchen competition, exile, romances, and personal adventures that later storytelling supplied. The beloved drama Changdeokgung, or Jewel in the Palace, built a rich fictional life around a small historical presence. It opened global interest in Korean court cuisine and medicine, but the real record remains tantalizingly narrow. The narrowness matters. Changdeokgung's appearance shows that a woman could gain enough medical trust to be mentioned in records centered on male government and royal health. It does not mean kitchen attendants routinely transferred into a modern medical academy after winning a cabbage challenge. Female practitioners were selected and trained within institutions designed partly to treat women across gender boundaries. Their status could remain low even while their expertise placed them near elite bodies. Skill and social equality did not arrive as a matching set. Another famous path belongs to court women who became royal consorts. Jang Ok-jong, later royal noble consort Hui, rose from palace service into extraordinary favor under King Sukjong in the late 17th century. Her ascent became entangled with factional politics, queenship, succession, deposition, restoration, and eventually her execution. Popular culture remembers beauty, ambition, jealousy, or villainy depending on the version. Historical context reveals a court in which a woman's reproductive role and family connections became surfaces upon which male political factions fought. Her story is not an invitation to palace romance. It is a warning that royal favor can pull a servant into a conflict without safe edges. Becoming the mother of a possible heir brings status and danger together. Every gift is observed, every relative gains enemies. Every change in the queen's position creates moral and political argument. A modern listener may imagine meeting a king as winning history's most exclusive dating show. The prize includes no exit, nationwide succession pressure, and commentators who will debate your character for 300 years. Changdeokgung, later royal noble consort Ui, entered palace service young and became associated with Crown Prince Yi San, the future King Jeongjo. Sources and later memoirs preserve glimpses of her intelligence and standing. Modern dramatizations, especially The Red Sleeve, emphasize her awareness that royal affection could erase the limited autonomy she possessed as a courtwoman. Whatever private emotions history cannot recover, the structural truth is powerful. Becoming a consort raised rank, but made the body and children of a former attendant central to dynastic expectation. Court Lady Jo, known as Jo Du-dae, served powerful royal women in the 15th century and became notable for influence and the criticism it attracted. Her access illustrates how senior attendants could connect private household requests with public affairs. Officials' complaints about such women tell us two things at once. They feared improper influence, and the influence was real enough to complain about. A person can be absent from the formal council and still shape who reaches the door. Lady Haegyong was not a court maid but a crown princess who entered the palace as a child and later wrote memoirs describing royal family life, political terror, ceremony, memory, and personal grief. Her memoirs illuminate the inner court through a royal woman's voice, including the catastrophe surrounding her husband, Crown Prince Sado. They remind us that palace walls enclosed people of high rank as firmly as servants, though never with equal labor or vulnerability. Hierarchy changes the room. It does not guarantee the room has a door you may use. Late in the dynasty, surviving photographs and recollections of palace women offer a different intimacy. We can see older attendants standing in plain, disciplined dress behind members of the imperial family. Their faces do not resemble the timeless young ensemble of a drama. They show careers measured in decades, bodies shaped by service, and a court approaching its political end. The Joseon state became the Korean Empire in 1897 and was annexed by Japan in 1910. Women who had entered one world lived to watch its titles, finances, buildings, and purposes change around them. You hear none of these future narratives during your imagined week. To you, Janggeom is a name from an older reign if remembered at all, not a TV franchise. Deokkim may belong to your own late Joseon setting or a neighboring generation, depending on the year we choose. The point is not to crowd every famous woman into one corridor. It is to understand how later memory selects rare brightness from a large field of anonymous labor. Yuanhua asks what you are thinking. You say you wonder whether anyone will remember the woman who prevented yesterday's fire. She considers this, then replies that the roof remembers. It is an unsentimental answer. The intact roof shelters tonight's bedding. Perhaps that is one form of record. History likes names because names fit labels. The palace survived through thousands of women who left no label. A clean collar, accurate letter, safe brazier, fed child, counted candle, prepared medicine, corrected tie, and shared chestnut are harder to display in a case. Together they made the case possible. The most persistent fantasy about palace service is that one royal glance changes everything. A young attendant carries tea. The king notices her intelligence, beauty, or unusually stable tray. Music rises. By the next episode, she has better clothing, private chambers, and enemies with excellent eyeliner. Historically, kings did sometimes favor court women. Some attendants became special court ladies or royal concubines. A few gave birth to princes or even future kings. The possibility existed, which is precisely why it was regulated and politically charged. For most palace women, the king was an employer, symbolic husband within the household's ideology, distant center of authority, and person whose routine generated their work. They might see him rarely or only through controlled service. The court contained hundreds of women across multiple residences and departments. A king could not meaningfully know them all. Proximity depended upon assignment. A kitchen trainee might shape a garnish that reached his table without ever seeing him lift the lid. If a king selected a court woman for sexual favor, refusal was not a simple exercise of equal personal choice. Rank, coercion, household pressure, and the woman's own calculation all shaped the encounter. Later romantic narratives can soften this imbalance because mutual love is easier to watch than royal authority entering a servant's life. A careful history allows for affection where sources support it without pretending power has disappeared. Promotion through favor also changed a woman's relationship with the community that raised her. She might receive a title, rooms, attendance, clothing, and provisions. Her family might gain status or opportunity. At the same time, senior consorts and the queen could view her through the politics of succession. Former peers now had to bow. Every pregnancy intensified scrutiny. If she bore no child or lost favor, her new position could become lonely. The latter rose into a smaller room. The queen's role was not merely to react jealously to romances. As principal wife, she carried ritual, household, and dynastic responsibilities. She oversaw the inner court, participated in state ceremonies, managed royal women and attendants, promoted sericulture and ideals of women's work, received greetings, and was expected to produce or support legitimate succession. Royal concubines also held ranked roles and could be integrated into household ritual. Personal conflicts certainly existed, but reducing these women to competitors for one man erases the institution they managed. You encounter the king only once in this week, and the encounter barely qualifies. You stand behind other attendants as he passes from a private residence toward an administrative hall. Guards and eunuchs shape the route. His robe is restrained but distinct. You see the embroidered chest area for a moment, the edge of his headgear, the measured step. Everyone lowers. The passage lasts perhaps 10 seconds. Your heart beats quickly, not because history has activated romance, but because the person who can alter every life around you has entered the same strip of air. He looks ahead. You look down. No one drops a book. No wind carries your ribbon across his sleeve. You will not be asked to solve a riddle. After he passes, work resumes before the sound of his steps has faded. An attendant checks the route. A messenger hurries after the party. Someone retrieves a screen. Yeonhwa notices your expression and asks whether you have fallen in love. You tell her you saw mostly shoes. She says many policies are made by shoes entering rooms, so perhaps you saw enough. Marriage beyond the palace remains closed to ranked attendants unless released. This can make royal favor appear the only recognized sexual future. But many women built meaningful lives through friendship, mentorship, craft, religious practice, writing, and attachment to royal households. A life without marriage was unusual in Joseon society, where women's roles were strongly organized around family, yet palace women formed another kind of household. Its limitations were profound, so was its social world. Stories circulated about forbidden love, secret meetings, and punished relationships because people desire even where rules forbid it. Some are documented, others belong to rumor and later fiction. The danger was real. A man caught in illicit contact with a palace woman could face severe punishment, and the woman's status did not shield her. Surveillance made romance less like a moonlit garden and more like a sequence of gates requiring several accomplices with no sense of self-preservation. The garden itself remains beautiful. Lotus ponds, pavilions, old trees, and paths through Changdeokgung's rear garden offered royal recreation and ceremonial settings. Court women sometimes accompanied royal parties and performed work within these spaces. They were not freely wandering there every evening to process feelings beneath falling petals. Access followed purpose. If you stand beside the pond, you're probably holding something. At sunset, you cross a smaller courtyard carrying folded screens. A single red leaf falls onto the top. You cannot move your hands to remove it, so it travels with you. This is the closest the week comes to a romantic sign. In the storage room, the keeper brushes it away and checks the screens for damage. The king has not rescued you from service. The leaf has not declared your destiny. You remain tired, ordinary, and in possession of a very useful lesson. If someone promises palace romance, ask first who is carrying the furniture. Joseon's ruling ideology elevated Neo-Confucian learning and ritual, often restricting Buddhism's institutional presence, especially in the capital. Yet belief inside the palace was never limited to one neat category. Royal women supported Buddhist temples, commissioned sutras or images, prayed for children and the dead, and sought comfort through practices officials sometimes criticized. Shamans could be consulted during illness or crisis despite prohibitions. Confucian rites, Buddhist devotion, folk belief, ancestor reverence, medicine, dreams, and omens lived beside one another, because fear and hope rarely obey administrative boundaries. Palace women carried these practices through daily life. A senior might recite a Buddhist phrase while sewing, keep a small protective object, interpret a dream, avoid an unlucky direction, or join prayers sponsored by a royal woman. Another might distrust such acts and emphasize proper Confucian conduct. A third uses every available form of protection because the child in her care has a fever and philosophical consistency can wait. The palace calendar includes ancestral rites at royal shrines and tombs. Offerings, clothing, vessels, music, and movement follow carefully ordered forms. Ancestors are not abstract history. They are members of the royal lineage whose continued honor supports legitimacy. Court women prepare items and royal participants for rites even when male officials perform the most visible sections. The living household extends into rooms prepared for the dead. On the final evening before your week ends, an attendant quietly marks the anniversary of a woman who trained her. There is no official ceremony. She sets aside a small, clean portion of food for a moment, bows in private, then removes it. Whether this act is orthodox, Buddhist, familial, or simply personal does not need to be decided. Memory has made its own ritual. You think of your family beyond the gate. In ordinary Joseon households, ancestor rites were increasingly organized through male lineage, especially among elites, and women's positions within natal and marital families changed across the dynasty. As a palace woman unable to marry normally, your place in family ritual can feel uncertain. You serve the royal family's continuity while standing at a distance from your own. Dreams therefore matter. Palace memoirs and records sometimes mention dreams interpreted as signs of pregnancy, death, favor, or political change. A dream offers meaning to people whose waking choices are constrained. The danger is that meaning can create accusation. A suspicious charm, written spell, buried object, or shamanic rite found during conflict might become evidence of an attempt to harm a rival. Palace history contains episodes in which ritual fear and factional politics sharpened each other. You dream during your brief sleep that the storeroom candles have become white cranes and are flying over the walls. In the morning, Yeonhwa says this means you counted them incorrectly. Her school of dream interpretation is practical and personally targeted. Religious comfort often comes through sound and repetition, a phrase recited under breath, wooden percussion from a distant temple beyond the city, the brushing of beads, the ordered bows of a rite. These acts regulate attention much as your evening routine does now. They narrow the world to breath, movement, and a familiar sequence. A palace woman who owns little private space can still create a small interior space through repetition. Royal patronage of Buddhism could provoke officials who saw it as wasteful or ideologically improper. Queens and dowagers sometimes use their resources and influence to protect temples or sponsor works. Their devotion reveals the limits of the state's official story. The same court that proclaimed Confucian rule contained women praying in Buddhist forms behind its walls. Public doctrine and private need shared a roof without resolving their argument. You do not need to decide what you believe after 1 week. At night you bow according to the household routine, then lie down and silently ask every available power for uninterrupted sleep. This broad theology is common among exhausted people. Rain begins lightly. The women settle. Someone whispers a remembered line. Someone else exhales. The paper door holds a circle of lamp glow until the flame is lowered. Beyond it, the palace walls stand between official order and the dark mountain. Within them, belief moves in small gestures that no chronicle hears. By the 7th day, you begin to wonder whether palace attendants ever rested. They did. Human beings cannot sustain continuous labor, and departments organized shifts, rotation, meals, sleep, and periods when particular women were off immediate duty. Festivals, games, garden outings, storytelling, reading, sewing for oneself, music, food sharing, and visits could offer pleasure depending on rank and circumstance. But free time inside a controlled residence does not mean leaving your workplace, changing into sweatpants, and becoming unreachable. Your free afternoon begins after the midday meal. The senior says you are not required until dusk unless summoned. This last phrase keeps one part of your mind standing. You wash, mend a personal tie, and sit in a patch of sun with Yeonhwa and 2 other trainees. For several minutes, no one knows what to do. Institutional time has trained your bodies to wait for an instruction. Leisure arrives without a department and therefore it seems suspicious. One girl produces knuckle bones or small pieces for a simple game, another has scraps of colored thread. You play on the warm floor, keeping voices low. Rules are modified whenever the person losing becomes responsible for explaining them. Yeonhwa wins twice and develops the calm pride of an admiral. You suspect cheating but lack an investigation bureau. Reading and recitation offer another form of rest. Literate court women could share vernacular novels, moral texts, poetry, histories, letters, and tales. By late Joseon, handwritten Hangul fiction circulated widely among women, including within palace and elite households. Stories of families, loyalty, separation, virtue, romance, travel, and the supernatural opened rooms beyond the wall. Court women copied text in the elegant palace hand, helping preserve and transmit a rich vernacular literary culture. An older attendant reads from a long family novel. Its characters possess multiple wives, hidden children, examinations, exiles, reunions, disguises, and enough relatives to require a ledger. Everyone follows easily except you, who lost the 3rd cousin during a change of names. The reader modulates her voice just enough to distinguish speakers outside, leave scratch across stone. For an hour, another household's troubles replace your own. Storytelling can also reinforce ideals. Exemplary women endure, obey, manage households, preserve chastity, and sacrifice for family. Yet listeners do not receive these lessons passively. They admire clever servants, complain about foolish husbands, debate whether the virtuous heroine had better options, and laugh where the moral compiler did not intend. A text enters a room, the room answers. Seasonal festivals bring special foods and customs. Lunar New Year greetings, the first full moon, spring outings, Dano, harvest celebrations, and winter solstice observances shape palace and city. Royal rites are formal, while workers also enjoy rice cakes, fruits, games, new clothing, or small gifts when resources allow. Celebration creates extra labor before it creates pleasure. The kitchen prepares festival food, sewing rooms finish garments, attendants clean ceremonial spaces. The holiday is restful mainly for the person whose holiday was carried in. Music reaches the women in many forms. Court ensembles perform for rites and banquets, professional female entertainers train in song and dance. Individual attendants may sing quietly, tap rhythms, or know popular tunes from outside. One trainee hums while sorting thread until a senior asks her to stop. Later, the same senior continues the melody under her breath, proving that authority is partly the right to deny having a song stuck in your head. You are allowed a short walk within an approved garden area. The rear garden of Changdeokgung follows valleys and wooded slopes, integrating pavilions, ponds, streams, and old trees with the landscape. It was a royal space, not a public park, but service sometimes brought palace women through it. Today, a senior accompanies the group. The walk is recreation and supervision traveling together. Autumn light lies across Buyongji Pond. A pavilion reflects between leaves. Stone edges hold the day's warmth. You see no ministers, no royal party, no visitors lifting phones. For a moment, the garden feels unowned. Then the senior points out that your group must return before the next gate change, and ownership reappears with the schedule. You collect no flowers because palace plants are not souvenirs. You take no portrait because the camera waits a century. You carry the image in memory. Green water, red leaf, dark roof, the quiet shape of women walking without trays. It will become one of the scenes you revisit during long night shifts. Back in the quarters, the free afternoon has 40 minutes left. You use them to sleep. This is not a failure of imagination. It is the highest form of leisure available to the employed. You lie down in daylight, hear Yeonhwa turning a page, and drift away before the next paragraph finds its ending. 1 week has made you feel old. The palace remains unimpressed. Advancement for court women was measured in years and service, not in the emotional age acquired after one difficult Tuesday. Trainees could spend a long apprenticeship learning department work before coming of age as established nain. Senior status such as Sanggong generally came only after decades, though royal favor, exceptional responsibility, institutional change, or unusual circumstance could alter a path. The popular image of a brilliant newcomer becoming head of the kitchen by the end of the season belongs safely in fiction. Seniority begins before formal rank. A girl who entered 2 years earlier knows roots, habits, and unwritten rules you lack. A woman who served under the previous queen remembers why a particular cabinet is never moved. Another has managed 3 royal births and can silence a crowded room by folding one towel. Knowledge accumulates in bodies. Promotion recognizes some of it, but much remains outside titles. The numbered female offices of the inner court drew from systems codified during early Joseon, with duties related to etiquette, clothing, food, records, attendance, music, and household management. In practice, working titles and departments mattered alongside formal schemes. A Sanggong might supervise a residence, intimate service, nursing, discipline, kitchens, or property. Not every senior woman held the same power. Authority depended on assignment and on the trust of the royal person served. A head attendant close to a queen dowager could influence access, personnel, and resources. She might know which request will be heard and which messenger will wait. Younger women seek her favor, while officials outside may resent her. If her royal patron dies, her position can change abruptly. Palace power is portable only when the relationship that carries it survives. Your first evaluation is informal. The senior who trained you asks several women how you have worked. The kitchen remembers the uneven cutting, but also the unspilled tray. The laundry remembers the pale cloud around the stain. The storeroom remembers the returned oil. Night duty remembers that you nearly nodded but did not fall. Fire duty remembers you carried water without running. A person emerges from these reports who is less elegant than you imagined and more reliable than you feared. The senior assigns you more practice in writing and intimate service. This is not a promotion. It is a direction. She believes your listing is better than your embroidery, a conclusion supported by the green fish leaf. Your future, if you remain, may involve messages, clothing, and waiting near royal rooms. The thought produces pride followed by dread. You have been selected to stand still professionally. Years of service would shape your voice. Palace vocabulary becomes natural. Your natal accent softens, hands learn knots without thought. You can identify senior footsteps in winter fabrics in darkness. New girls arrive with bundles and frightened eyes. One day, you will tighten a child's collar beside the brazier and say nothing, becoming the woman who comforted you on the first night. The change is not simply institutional capture. Expertise brings satisfaction. A veteran courtwoman is not an empty servant. She can be a manager, teacher, calligrapher, textile specialist, cook, nurse, accountant, storyteller, and keeper of royal memory. She may command teams and negotiate with officials or eunuchs. Her work is constrained by hierarchy and made meaningful through mastery. Both truths must be held together. Age also brings physical cost. Eyes weaken after years of fine sewing and lamplight. Knees and backs ache. Winter settles into joints. Smoke affects lungs. Hand scar. Dental pain. Childbirth, if a woman became a consort, infection, and chronic illness, receive the medicine available, not the medicine you would choose. Seniority may reduce carrying but increase sleepless responsibility. The older woman no longer lifts every bucket. She wakes whenever someone else drops one. Retirement or release could occur in old age or illness, depending on rules and royal permission. Some women left to live with relatives or in residences connected to former royal households. Others remained because the palace was the only home they knew. A woman who entered before remembering her village clearly might find the outside world more foreign than the inner gate. The palace itself ages. Roofs are retiled, paper replaced, paint renewed, buildings burn and return, kings die, queens become dowagers, crown princes inherit, young attendants become seniors beneath halls that look unchanged to the next generation. Service gives a woman continuity and takes continuity from her at once. She stays in place while everyone she serves moves through time. Yanhua asks whether you want to become a sangung. After 7 days, the question feels like asking whether you want to become a mountain. You say you would first like to become someone who can kneel without making 3 separate decisions. She agrees this is a sound beginning. That evening, the senior gives you a cleaner brush and a fresh practice page. The quality difference is slight but unmistakable. No ceremony marks the gift. You touch the brush to ink and write the first character more evenly than before. Promotion may take half a lifetime. Trust can begin with a better brush. No palace career belongs to one frozen reign. A woman entering under one king may serve his queen, mother, son, grandson, or widow. Political crises, royal deaths, marriages, births, depositions, invasions, fires, reforms, and changes of residence alter the household around her. The dynasty's timeline becomes her workplace history. She remembers a coup by which storeroom was sealed, a royal marriage by how many nights the sewing room stayed awake, and a famine by the thinness of everyone's soup. When a king dies, the crown passes according to succession, but continuity requires immense rearrangement. The heir's household becomes the king's. His wife becomes queen. A dowager gains a new title and senior position. The late king's consorts move into changed circumstances. Personnel, seals, clothing, greetings, budgets, and residences shift. Every form of address you memorized now threatens to become wrong before breakfast. Court women attached to the new sovereign may rise in practical importance. Those tied to a previous favorite may lose access, yet long-serving attendants are valuable precisely because they know how transition works. They possess institutional memory no decree can create. A new queen entering young may depend on women who understand the palace better than anyone in her natal household. Trust grows within the unequal relationship between royal mistress and attendant, sometimes becoming genuine affection. Political purges outside can reach inside. A queen may be deposed because her family loses factional struggle. Royal consorts may rise or fall. Relatives are exiled. A prince is removed from succession. Palace women can be questioned about messages, behavior, pregnancies, or private conversations. Their testimony becomes dangerous. Remaining invisible is difficult when officials suddenly believe you saw everything. The reigns of Sukjong, Yeongjo, and Jeongjo in the late 17th and 18th centuries offer famous examples of faction, succession, royal women, and court memory. Queen Inhyun's deposition and restoration, consort Hui's rise and fall, Prince Sado's death, and Jeongjo's accession created inner court grief that official political narratives cannot fully contain. Attendants dress people for moments that later became national history. then cleared the rooms afterward. Lady Hyekyung's memoirs show how a royal woman used writing across decades to interpret catastrophe and defend family memory. Court ladies around her also remembered, though few left comparable texts. Oral accounts passed among women and into later recollections. Memory is political because the person who explains the past influences how the next generation understands loyalty. War creates more violent change. During the Japanese invasions beginning in 1592, the royal court fled the capital and palaces burned. Women of the household traveled under fear, carrying what could be carried, leaving rooms they might never see again. Later Manchu invasions again displaced the court. A palace maid's work in flight would involve food, clothing, children, medicine, bedding, and the impossible task of maintaining royal order on roads crowded with national disaster. Our imagined late Joseon week is peaceful by comparison. The gates close through routine, not invasion, yet the architecture remembers fire and rebuilding. Older stories warn attendants what to carry. Storage methods, route plans, and discipline grow from crises that younger workers experience only as rules. Institutions keep scars in procedure. The 19th century brings new pressures. Powerful in-law families, financial strain, social unrest, foreign contact, religious persecution, peasant rebellion, and imperial competition. Gyeongbokgung is rebuilt on a grand scale under the regency of Hongseon Daewongun. The court later confronts unequal treaties, modern technology, new uniforms, electricity, photography, telephones, and altered medicine. Imagine entering a palace lit by oil and growing old where electric bulbs appear. The miracle is accompanied by a worker explaining that the new system still needs maintenance. In 1897, King Gojong declares the Korean Empire. Titles and rituals change. Court women become imperial attendants in a household seeking new international standing. Photographs capture some of them. Then Japanese colonial rule dismantles sovereign court structures, reduces finances, reorganizes residences, and scatters workers. Women who understood a world through rank and royal service must find lives after the institution loses its state. This future rests far beyond your week, but the palace career contains its possibility. The painted gate feels permanent only because one person's life is short beside it. Over generations, the gate burns, rebuilds, changes guards, admits foreigners, frames photographs, and eventually opens to visitors buying tickets. You stand in the courtyard at dusk while a senior tells a story from the previous reign. She identifies people by old titles, corrects herself, then continues. For her, dynastic chronology is not a chart. It is the sequence in which friends moved rooms. You listen, adding her memory to yours. One day, if you remain, you may be the old woman saying, "Before the Eastern Hall was repaired," while a trainee struggles to imagine the palace any other way. Reigns change through proclamations. Daily life changes through the moment everyone has to learn a new route. At the end of your imagined week, permission arrives for a short supervised errand near an outer service gate. You are not being released. A bundle must pass to an approved carrier, and a senior allows you to accompany it because your letter home can leave through the same connection. The news produces more excitement than is dignified. You check the folded page 3 times, though the words have not changed during the night. Moving outward reverses your first arrival. Familiar courtyards become thresholds again. You pass the kitchens, a storage wall, guards, and a gatehouse where names and objects are checked. The palace protects itself through controlled exchange with hanyang, food, fuel, cloth laborers, officials, craftsmen, messengers, physicians, and news must enter. Waste, payments, orders, repairs, letters, and people with permission must leave. No wall can support a royal household without becoming a membrane. The capital beyond is not freedom in a modern sense. Joseon women of different classes face household authority, gender restrictions, labor, status boundaries, danger, and economic necessity. A commoner daughter may work in fields or shops. A noblewoman may live within regulated inner quarters. A female physician, shaman, entertainer, merchant, slave, craft worker, or innkeeper occupies another difficult path. The palace is not the only enclosure. It is simply the enclosure with painted rafters. At the service gate, you smell the city before seeing much of it. Smoke, animals, hot grain, damp earth, human waste, garlic, and market food. Voices overlap beyond the wall. A cartwheel knocks against stone. Somewhere a vendor calls. After a week of measured palace speech, the disorder sounds enormous and alive. You cannot step into it. The senior delivers the official bundle. Your letter is handed to the approved carrier, who tucks it safely within his clothing or case. You ask when it may arrive. He gives an estimate broad enough to include hope and weather. There is no tracking number. The message has left your hand, which is all certainty available. For a moment you see part of the street through the open gate. A child pulls another by the sleeve. A woman balances a load. A man argues beside the cart. The city does not know you're watching. It continues without lowering its voice. Home lies somewhere beyond roofs you cannot identify from this angle. Resident palace women could sometimes leave under permission for family need, age, illness, or official purpose, but movement was limited. Lower workers such as Musuri might cross more routinely because their status and tasks differed. The image of every court lady sealed forever behind 9 literal gates oversimplifies practice, yet the feeling of enclosure was real. Rules, distance, duty, and dependence narrowed departure even when a gate physically opened. The carrier departs. Guards close the gate. The wooden leaves meet with a weight you feel through the ground. Your letter is outside. You're inside. This division has become the basic grammar of your life. You expect tears, but the senior immediately asks whether the official receipt was returned. It was. She folds it and gives it to you to carry back. Grief and accounting share the walk. On the return route, the palace looks different. You notice how its walls block the city's noise. Within them, status can be read in clothing and paths. Meals arrive according to bells. Rooms belong to departments. Outside seemed chaotic, but it held the possibility of turning down a street. Inside seems orderly because turning is regulated. Would you choose to leave if permission came permanently? After only a week, yes. You would run toward a mattress, hot shower, private bathroom, antibiotics, comfortable shoes, labor law, and a door you can close without first checking another person's rank. A woman who had lived here 30 years might answer differently. Her friends, skills, language, memories, food, and identity all reside behind the gate. Freedom from the institution could become exile from the only community that knows her. Back in the quarters, Yeonhwa asks whether the city has changed. You say it is exactly where you left it. She nods as if this is surprising. The two of you sit while evening light rises through the paper door. Somewhere beyond the wall, your letter is moving slowly toward home. The gate opens for deliveries, officials, and people with permission. It opens for history's armies and later for tourists. It does not open equally for everyone who can see it. That is why its closing sound follows palace women even into sleep. Sunday night arrives, though the palace does not recognize your modern week with a clean weekend boundary. 7 days have passed in our telling. You entered before dawn with a bundle and the confidence of someone who has survived group projects. You now possess a reddened pair of hands, a bruised knee, one improved brush stroke, several corrected bows, and an intimate distrust of trays near thresholds. No single task defeated you. Carrying water was possible. Folding cloth was possible. Standing at night was possible for one night. Keeping silent was possible for one conversation. Kneeling, sewing, counting, cleaning, waiting, and learning titles were all possible in isolation. The difficulty came from combination. Each task belonged to a hierarchy. Each hierarchy occupied your body. The schedule offered little recovery before the next demand. You would miss privacy first. Shared sleeping rooms, supervised movement, bodily service, group meals, gate controls, and attention to conduct leave few spaces where you are not visible to someone. Even your silence can be evaluated. A modern bedroom allows disorder that harms no dynasty. Here, a crooked ribbon is a small public fact. You would miss choice next. The palace determines where you live, what department trains you, whom you address, when you wake, which route you use, whether you leave, and what future relationships are permitted. People inside carve choices from smaller material: how to teach, whom to trust, which story to read, whether to share a chestnut, what sentence to place in a letter. These choices matter because they are limited, not because the limits disappear. Your body would complain. Floors, thresholds, stairs, courtyards, buckets, smoke, heat, cold, humidity, hand sewing, night duty, thin shoes, and repeated kneeling require adaptation built from childhood and repetition. A modern visitor arriving without technique would waste energy. You bend from the back instead of the hips, grip too tightly, carry weight too far from the body, and discover muscles that have been unemployed since birth. Your memory would fail under rank and procedure. Titles change by person and context. Clothing, vessels, speech, food, messages, and routes all carry rules. Senior attendants do not consult a searchable manual in the middle of service. The knowledge lives within the team. until it lives in you. Every ordinary action needs conscious thought. Exhaustion arrives, partly because nothing is automatic. You would struggle with consequence. In modern life, a stained shirt is annoying. Here, it may belong to a royal wardrobe. A late meal affects a formal schedule. A repeated rumor harms a household. A careless coal threatens wooden halls. A private relationship can become a legal offense. The palace converts small errors into institutional problems because so many people and symbols depend upon controlled appearance, and you would struggle with invisibility. Good work removes evidence of itself. Nobody cheers when the room is warm, the medicine correct, the lamp safe, the child calm, the garment clean, and the rice on time. These are expected conditions. Recognition comes slowly through trust, responsibility, and seniority. A person raised on immediate feedback might perish emotionally beside a perfectly folded towel. Yet saying you would not last is not the same as saying the women who did were passive or superhuman. They adapted because they learned, because alternatives were limited, because work supplied food and identity, because other women taught them, because skill became pride, and because human beings make homes inside structures they did not design. Endurance is often social before it is heroic. Palace women maintained the intimate infrastructure of monarchy. They fed royal bodies, preserved garments, transmitted writing, raised children, managed rooms, prepared rituals, watched illness, controlled supplies, carried messages, protected secrets, and remembered households across reigns. Some used access to gain influence, some suffered punishment or exploitation, some found affection and mastery. Most performed lives too ordinary for the Chronicles and too essential for the palace to function without them. The beauty of Joseon court culture rests partly on their hands. This does not make hardship beautiful. It makes the finished surface honest only when the labor remains visible beneath it. A silk robe is still lovely after we remember the needle. A warm floor feels warmer after we remember the fuel basket. A quiet royal meal becomes more interesting after we hear the kitchen. At the end of the week, the senior attendant calls you to the doorway. She corrects your posture once more, then tells you that tomorrow you will repeat the morning route without guidance. This is her verdict. You are not competent, but you are teachable. In the palace, this may be affection. You bow. The movement is smoother than it was 7 days ago. You leave without turning the wrong way. No bowl breaks, no ribbon catches. Behind you, the senior woman gives the smallest nod. Would you last another week? Perhaps the body could. The heart would depend on Yeonhwa, the letter beyond the gate, the warm patch of floor, and the possibility that skill might one day make the corridors feel less like a maze. But tonight you have modern bedding waiting, and wisdom suggests accepting the rescue. Think for a moment about the quiet technologies you would miss. A tap turns and clean water arrives without a shoulder learning its weight. A washing machine performs hours of wet labor inside a box. Electric light asks for no oil, wick, smoke, or night attendant. Central heating does not require a fuel basket carried across frost. Refrigeration holds summer food below the temperature preferred by flies. A phone delivers a family message before the emotion that produced it has cooled. None of these conveniences guarantees a peaceful life, but together they return time to an ordinary person in amounts a palace maid would recognize as well. You would also miss the modern right to be average and private. At home, breakfast may be late, the towel imperfectly folded, and the hairstyle openly negotiating with gravity. No royal dignity is injured. The freedom to perform a task badly for yourself is a peculiar luxury. Palace service transforms the domestic world into public responsibility. Cooking, cleaning, dressing, childcare, nursing, and sewing become state-adjacent labor because the household belongs to the dynasty. The work often called women's work is revealed as infrastructure when the person receiving it wears a crown. This is perhaps the most useful image to carry from the painted walls. Power is not only the figure seated at the center of a hall, it is also the arrangement that allows him or her to remain seated. Food delivered, clothing prepared, rooms heated, bodies guarded, children raised, and mistakes absorbed before they cross the screen. The palace makes dependence visible once we look away from the throne. Modern institutions perform the same trick, with different uniforms. Every effortless surface has a hidden corridor where somebody is hurrying carefully. And still, the week contains pleasure. There was rain on tile, thread under good light, a story read aloud, a meal eaten while hungry, a leaf traveling on a folded screen, and the relief of getting one difficult movement right. Hard lives are not empty lives. To describe only suffering would flatten palace women as surely as romantic fantasy does. They laughed, competed, believed, learned, wrote, remembered, cared for one another, and sometimes took pride in being the person who knew what to do when everyone else froze. Their humanity exceeds both victimhood and glamour, so the title can keep its promise. You probably would not last a week. Not because modern people are weaker in every way, and not because Joseon women possessed a magical reserve of obedience, but because survival is a trained relationship with one's world. They had techniques, communities, expectations, and knowledge built from childhood. You would arrive with different tools, give you years, teachers, necessity, and Yeonhwa's patient hand, and you might adapt too. That possibility does not make the system fair. It simply gives the people inside it the dignity of skill. Now the weak can loosen its hold. The lists have been checked. The lamp oil has been returned. Clean cloth rests in the correct basket. The medicine case is closed. The last tray has crossed the final threshold without spilling. In the sewing room, needles lie in their cases. Colored thread dims as the lamp lowers. The unfinished leaf waits in its frame, green stitches following the line the senior showed you. Tomorrow another hand will continue it. Nothing needs to be finished tonight. In the kitchen, fires settle beneath ash. Earthenware jars stand in the cold yard. A covered pot holds grain for morning. Knives are clean. Wooden boards dry against the wall. Steam no longer crowds the rafters. In the storeroom, candles keep their number. Cloth sleeps in folded layers. Paper holds names, amounts, and marks made by women concentrating in lamplight. The key turns once and becomes still. Beyond the inner quarters, guards make their slow rounds. One call travels beneath the tiled roofs, then another answers from far away. The sound is low, measured, and already part of the night. The royal rooms grow quiet behind screens and paper doors. A cup of water waits within reach. Bedding has been spread. The floor holds a gentle warmth. An attendant sits nearby, awake so someone else can sleep. In the trainee's room, ribbons are untied. Jackets are folded. Hair loosens across shoulders. Women settle beside one another, no longer arranged by the appearance of the day. Yeonhwa turns toward the wall. Someone sighs and finds a cooler place for one foot. Your letter moves somewhere beyond the gate, perhaps beneath a traveler's robe, perhaps resting safely until morning. It carries the line about frost under the shaded wall. Home has not read it yet. For now, it is enough that the words are on their way. You lie down on the warm part of the floor, this time because someone has made room. The quilt is heavier than your blanket at home and smells faintly of clean cotton, wood smoke, and the room's familiar air. Rain touches the roof, very lightly at first. One drop, then another. It gathers along the tiles and falls beyond the eaves into the dark courtyard. No drain is blocked. No cloth remains outside. The night attendants have checked. The painted beams above you disappear into shadow. The palace walls soften. They no longer feel like a diagram of permissions. They are simply distant shapes holding back the wind. You do not need to remember the titles now. You do not need to count the candles, test the water, carry the screen, interpret the eyebrow, or make your footsteps small. Every task can wait on the other side of sleep. The gate is closed, but your room is safe. The brazier is watched. The embers remain where they belong. A senior woman listens once, hears only rain, and lets her shoulders lower. Outside the palace, Hanyang settles beneath the mountain. Market lanes empty. Carts stand under covers. Temple bells are quiet in the distance. Roof after roof darkens toward the river. Centuries from now, visitors will walk these courtyards in comfortable shoes. They will look at the graceful halls, photograph reflections in ponds, and hear wind in old trees. Some may pause beside a service passage and wonder who carried water there before sunrise. Tonight, not one famous heroine, but many women. Young girls, skilled workers, strict seniors, kitchen experts, nurses, writers, cleaners, embroiderers, storekeepers, and attendants who learned how to make effort disappear. You can let them step back into the quiet now. The history has been carried far enough. The tray is down. Your hands are empty. Take one slow breath beneath your own blanket. Let the forehead soften. Let the jaw rest. Let the shoulders fall away from the ears, as if a heavy palace jacket has finally been untied. The rain continues across the dark tiles. The lamp becomes a smaller circle. The paper door fades from amber to gray. No bell is calling you. No senior is waiting at the threshold. No royal household needs the next hour. The warm floor holds the last of the day. The room breathes around you. Somewhere beside the bedding, a better brush dries after one careful line, and as the palace settles behind its painted gates, you may settle too, quiet, unobserved, free to turn whichever way is comfortable. Good night and sleep well.